What if aliens invaded Earth in your lifetime? It sounds impossible, yet history, science, and even ancient myths suggest it's a question we can't ignore. In this documentary, we'll explore what an invasion might truly look like, from the first signs in the sky to the collapse of nations, and how humanity could respond when faced with the unknown. Before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more journeys into the mysteries of the universe. And I'd love for you to leave a comment below. Tell me where in the world you're watching from and what time it is right now where you are. It's always amazing to see how far this community reaches across our planet. The first signs in the sky. What humanity might notice first if they came. If an alien presence were ever to arrive in our skies, the beginning might not feel like a Hollywood movie. There might be no thunderous motherships blotting out the sun, no sudden flashes of light that turn night into day. Instead, the first signs could be quiet, subtle, easy to miss if not for the patient eyes of scientists, satellites, and sky watchers who spend their nights looking upward. Think of how most discoveries are made in astronomy. A faint smudge on a telescope's lens turns out to be a galaxy millions of light years away. A dip in starlight reveals the presence of an exoplanet. These monumental findings begin not with spectacle, but with whispers. If aliens were truly on their way, the first whispers might take the form of anomalies, objects moving against the normal flow of satellites, unusual glimmers on radar, or light patterns in the atmosphere that don't fit natural explanations. For everyday people, the first signs might feel more like coincidences. Someone notices stars, out of place, brighter one night than they were the night before. Pilots might report strange movements on their radar screens, unusual blips that appear and vanish in seconds, traveling faster than any aircraft should. To most of us, these details would go unnoticed, just another mystery tucked into the endless sky. But to those watching closely, these patterns would feel different, almost deliberate. Imagine being outside in your backyard on a warm evening. The air hums with cicadas, the glow of city lights softens the horizon, and you catch a glimpse of something unusual, a point of light that doesn't behave like the others. It doesn't twinkle like a star, doesn't drift like a plane. Instead, it glides smoothly, then shifts direction with impossible precision. You might shrug it off as imagination or technology you don't understand. But in that fleeting moment, you would have felt what humanity as a whole might feel in the early stages of an encounter. A quiet unease that something in the sky isn't as it should be. Scientists often talk about techno-signatures, indicators of advanced civilizations that might appear in ways we don't yet fully recognize. These could be powerful bursts of radio waves, beams of unusual light, or objects that defy the known laws of physics. If aliens came to Earth, perhaps they wouldn't begin with fleets or weapons. Perhaps their presence would first show itself in these strange signatures. A pulse of energy not from any known star, or an object reflecting sunlight in a way no asteroid ever could. There's also the possibility that the first sign wouldn't be in the sky at all, but in our machines. Imagine NASA's satellites suddenly picking up interference they can't explain, patterns that resemble code, static that arranges itself into rhythm. Astronomers might notice that a new comet has entered the solar system, only to realize its path is too straight, too controlled, like a stone skipping across water instead of drifting naturally. These subtle differences are often the clues that separate the ordinary from the extraordinary. History has given us previews of how these signs might feel. The WOW signal detected in 1977 was a burst of radio energy so sharp and unusual that astronomers still debate what it was. For 72 seconds, it appeared to be a message from the stars, only to vanish and never repeat. If a true invasion were ever to come, perhaps the first warnings would be similar. Fleeting glimpses, hard to pin down, leaving more questions than answers. And of course, there is the human imagination to contend with. The sky has always been a canvas for our fears and hopes. Meteors once inspired myths of angry gods. Comets were seen as omens of doom. Even today, a streak of light across the night can send our thoughts racing. So if aliens were truly approaching, the signs might at first feel indistinguishable from folklore. Some would dismiss them as conspiracy theories, while others would sound alarms long before evidence was clear. The uncertainty itself would be one of the first symptoms. Consider the analogy of a storm approaching across the plains. Before the thunder, before the lightning, there are whispers of change, a sudden stillness in the air, clouds thickening on the horizon, animals going quiet. To the untrained eye, it may look like nothing, but those who know storms recognize the subtle warnings. An alien presence might be the same. The atmosphere of Earth could react in small ways. Our instruments might twitch, our satellites might glitch, and only later would we understand that these were the first rumbles of something larger. It's also worth wondering how deliberate those first signs might be. If an advanced species wished to make themselves known, perhaps they would choose subtlety at first, a test of how we respond. A sudden, overwhelming arrival might spark panic, but a faint glow, a peculiar trajectory, a signature in our data, these could be ways of easing us into awareness, a cosmic knocking on the door, asking if we are ready to see. On the other hand, what if the signs weren't deliberate at all? What if their technology simply leaks into our awareness, radiation from their ships, gravitational anomalies caused by their engines, distortions of space-time that our scientists notice before our governments admit what's happening? It may not be a message or a warning, but a side effect of their presence, the way a ship's wake ripples across the water long before the vessel itself appears. The first signs in the sky would likely leave us divided. Some would call them proof, others illusion. Some would demand answers, while others would insist there was nothing unusual at all. But that tension, that uncertainty, is precisely how history has always unfolded when humanity confronts the unknown. It begins with whispers, patterns barely visible, shadows that don't quite make sense. And as the whispers grow louder, we begin to realize the story is just beginning. NASA's hidden files, alleged cover-ups, and leaked reports of UFO encounters. For as long as people have looked up at the stars, there has been suspicion that those in power know more than they are willing to share. NASA, the agency that has come to symbolize humanity's eyes in space, often stands at the center of these suspicions. To many, the very idea of hidden files feels like a shadowy room deep beneath headquarters, locked cabinets of grainy photographs, reels of film, and reports stamped with bold red words, classified. Whether such a room exists or not, the stories that surround it have shaped public imagination for decades. The first thing to understand is why NASA, in particular, attracts these ideas. It is not only a scientific institution, it is a symbol of trust. When NASA tells us the distance to the moon or the age of a galaxy, we believe them. They are guardians of truth about the skies. So naturally, if there was something extraordinary, alien craft, strange signals, inexplicable encounters, many assume NASA would be the first to know. And if they knew, would they tell us? That question lingers like a ghost behind every press release. One of the most persistent stories is that of astronauts themselves, men and women who ventured into space only to witness things they could not explain. Take Apollo 11, the mission that first landed humans on the moon in 1969. Conspiracy theorists often claim that parts of the astronauts' transmissions were censored, that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin described mysterious objects, observing them from a distance. NASA insists this is myth, but the allure remains. The idea that humanity's first steps on another world may have been watched is too powerful to dismiss easily. There are also the claims tied to the space shuttle era. Pilots reported flashes of light, glimmers of objects moving in ways no satellite should. Officially, these were space debris, ice crystals, reflections from sunlight. Yet, in the grainy footage archived online, viewers see something else. Movements too sudden, too sharp, too intentional to be explained away as fragments of rock or ice. For some, these clips are proof that NASA has been quietly cataloguing encounters it cannot fully explain, choosing bland explanations to avoid public panic. Then there are the leaks, documents passed anonymously, whistleblowers claiming access to restricted programs. One such file that circulates online speaks of fast walkers, unidentified objects moving across radar screens at impossible speeds. Another describes unidentified aerial phenomena, not in Earth's skies, but beyond the atmosphere, spotted by military satellites. These stories blur the line between fact and speculation. They often appear without full context, but they feed into the belief that what we are told publicly is only part of the story. It is important to note that secrecy itself is not unusual in space exploration. NASA works alongside the Department of Defense, and many satellites are military in nature. Not every object spotted can be shared openly, because some are simply classified technology from Earth. Yet this very overlap creates fertile ground for suspicion. If officials are already withholding information for security reasons, why wouldn't they also hide evidence of something more unusual? For many believers, the strongest evidence of hidden files comes not from what NASA says, but from what it refuses to say. Press conferences where questions about UFOs are deflected, reports that stop short of conclusions, photographs with curious smudges or blurs in the background. Each omission feels to them like confirmation. The less they reveal, the more people assume they must be hiding. And yet, we must also consider another possibility, that the hidden files are not sinister cover-ups, but a reflection of uncertainty. That NASA, like the rest of us, sees things it cannot explain, and stores those records away not out of malice, but because there is no clear answer. Imagine a folder filled with reports, lights, movements, signals, strange but inconclusive. Without proof, perhaps it is easier, safer to stay silent than to risk fueling hysteria. Still, the allure of secrecy endures. People picture underground vaults filled with alien wreckage, or hard drives containing images of structures on Mars. Some speak of secret briefings where only the highest ranks are told the truth. Others imagine even astronauts themselves being sworn to silence, their testimonies buried under layers of classification. Whether or not such scenarios exist, they echo a deeper truth, that humanity longs for answers, and in the absence of them, we weave stories from shadows. The very idea of NASA's hidden files has become part of modern folklore. It reflects both our suspicion of authority and our yearning for mystery. We imagine locked doors not because we know what lies behind them, but because we cannot bear the thought that the universe is stranger than we are allowed to believe. And in those imagined vaults, those whispered documents, we project our greatest fears and hopes, that aliens are real, that we are not alone, and that the truth is too vast for us to face all at once. Somewhere in the quiet halls of NASA, there may indeed be drawers of reports marked unexplained, perhaps nothing more than peculiar radar returns, unusual glimmers caught on film, or signals that never repeated. Or perhaps, just perhaps, those hidden files hold something more. The Fermi paradox revisited. Why their silence may mean they're already watching. In the middle of the 20th century, the physicist Enrico Fermi posed a question so simple and yet so haunting that it still echoes through astronomy and philosophy today. He asked, "Where is everybody?" If the universe is so vast, with billions of stars older than the sun and countless planets that could sustain life, why haven't we seen proof of civilizations beyond our own? Why is the night sky so silent? This puzzle became known as the Fermi paradox, and it has become one of the central mysteries of modern science. At first glance, the silence seems discouraging. Maybe life is rare. Maybe intelligence burns itself out before it can travel far. Maybe we are alone in the galaxy, a solitary spark in endless darkness. But there is another possibility, one more unsettling. What if the silence is not because they are absent, but because they are already here, watching, waiting, choosing not to reveal themselves? The paradox is like walking into a forest at night. You hear no animals, no footsteps, no rustle of leaves. The quiet feels strange, almost unnatural. But perhaps the silence does not mean the forest is empty. Perhaps it means the creatures within are simply watching you, waiting, hiding in shadows because they have learned that making noise attracts predators. Some thinkers call this the dark forest hypothesis. It imagines the galaxy as a forest filled with hunters. Each civilization is cautious, concealing its presence, because to shout into the darkness is to invite danger. If that is true, then Earth, bright with radio signals, satellites and city lights, is not a mystery, but an open beacon. We may already be noticed, and the silence of the others may not be absence, but restraint. It is not difficult to imagine why a civilization would watch, rather than speak. We ourselves send probes to planets before we send people. We observe carefully before making contact. Why would aliens act any differently? Perhaps interstellar visitors like Oumuamua, Borisov, or 3I Atlas were not accidents at all, but scouts, small silent probes designed to study us without interference. They would drift past like stones disguised as comets, while quietly recording everything about us. There is also the possibility that silence is a form of communication itself. Imagine if an advanced intelligence regarded us the way we regard a newly discovered species in the wild. When biologists observe animals, they do not always announce their presence. Sometimes they remain hidden, watching behavior unfold naturally. The absence of sound, of signals, could be a choice, allowing us to reveal who we are without influence. And yet, the thought carries weight. If the silence is deliberate, then it means we are not in control of the encounter. We may be the ones under observation, our broadcasts and movements already catalogued, our defenses already measured. Our most powerful telescopes scan the heavens. But what if the gaze is reversed? What if we are the stars of a cosmic play, watched silently from the wings by an audience we cannot see? The Fermi paradox forces us to confront the unsettling balance between hope and fear. On one hand, silence may mean safety, no predators nearby. On the other, it may mean something more calculated, that the galaxy is alive with watchers, and we are too inexperienced to notice their eyes. For those who believe in UFO encounters, this idea fits neatly with long-standing suspicions. Lights in the sky, sudden appearances and disappearances, strange craft that move beyond the laws of physics. What if these are not random incidents, but glimpses of surveillance? What if the reason the universe does not shout back to us is because its voices are already whispering here, on the edges of our perception? Of course, science remains cautious. The safest explanation for the silence is simply distance and scale. The galaxy is vast, signals grow faint, civilizations may not last long enough to overlap. But the paradox lingers precisely because none of these explanations fully satisfy. The silence feels too complete, too total, almost intentional. And so we find ourselves caught between two possibilities. Either we are alone in a universe so vast it should be full of life, or we are surrounded, observed quietly by neighbors who have chosen patience over disclosure. Both possibilities are profound. Both change how we see ourselves beneath the stars. If the silence truly means they are already watching, then every passing interstellar object, every unexplained signal, every whisper of the unknown becomes more than curiosity. It becomes a reminder that we are not simply searching outward. We may also be the ones being studied, tested, and quietly judged. Ancient visitors, the theories that aliens have been here before. Long before telescopes revealed the swirling arms of galaxies, long before rockets carried humans beyond Earth, people were already looking up at the stars and wondering if we were alone. Myths, legends, and sacred texts from across the world often tell of beings descending from the sky, teaching knowledge, or reshaping the destiny of humankind. Today, some interpret these stories not as metaphor, but as history, evidence of ancient visitors who may have walked among us long ago. The theory, often called ancient astronaut theory, suggests that advanced civilizations from other worlds might have visited Earth in the deep past. To believers, clues are scattered across the planet like breadcrumbs. They point to megalithic monuments such as the pyramids of Egypt, the Nazca Lines in Peru, and the mysterious stone heads of Easter Island. These works are so immense, so precise, that some argue they could not have been achieved with the tools available at the time. Instead, they imagine knowledge passed down by visitors from the stars, engineers, teachers, or perhaps even gods misremembered in myth. Consider the pyramids. Rising from the desert thousands of years ago, their construction still sparks debate. Historians explain them as the result of human ingenuity, labor, and a deep understanding of mathematics. Yet for those who believe in ancient visitors, the precision of the stones, their alignment with constellations, and the sheer scale of the structures hint at outside influence. Could the pyramids have been built not only as tombs, but as markers, beacons visible from above, meant for those who first inspired them? Then there are the Nazca Lines, vast geoglyphs etched into the desert floor, some stretching for hundreds of feet. From the ground, they are nearly invisible, but from the air they form birds, animals, and strange geometric shapes. To the ancient peoples of Peru, they may have held spiritual meaning. To theorists, they look suspiciously like landing strips, messages meant for watchers in the sky. Stories in ancient texts also feed the mystery. The Sumerians wrote of the Anunnaki, beings who came from the heavens to shape human civilization. In India, the Sanskrit epics describe flying chariots called vimanas, machines of war and travel said to soar across the skies with the power of fire. Even in the Bible, the prophet Ezekiel describes a vision of wheels within wheels descending from above, glowing with fire and light. Were these divine visions, or could they be the misinterpreted memories of encounters with advanced beings? Skeptics argue that these interpretations underestimate the brilliance of ancient humans. Civilizations rose and fell with remarkable engineering skills, artistic visions, and religious imaginations. To say aliens did it risks erasing human achievement. And yet, the persistence of the theory reflects something deeper than mere speculation. It reflects a sense that humanity's story may not be entirely its own, that perhaps, at key moments, an outside hand nudged us forward, or at least left traces for us to wonder about. Even beyond structures and texts, there are stranger claims, cave paintings that appear to show figures with helmets and visors, artifacts shaped like aircraft, myths of sky people who came down to teach. Each of these is debated, dismissed by some as coincidence, embraced by others as evidence. The truth is uncertain, but the questions remain. What if the silence we hear today, the great absence of contact, is not silence at all, but restraint? What if the visitors have already come, left their mark, and moved on, waiting to see what we make of ourselves? That idea is both comforting and unsettling. Comforting because it means we are not forgotten. Unsettling because it means we may be under watch, our history not entirely of our own making. Imagine for a moment if even one story were true, if even one monument or myth were the legacy of an ancient encounter. It would mean humanity has always lived in the shadow of the stars, guided or nudged by intelligences beyond our understanding. It would mean that our ancestors did not simply imagine gods, but perhaps recorded glimpses of beings whose presence was so overwhelming, so strange, that the only words they had were divine. The question lingers not because we lack answers, but because the evidence itself feels like a mirror. It reflects our longing for connection, our suspicion that we are part of a greater story, our belief that the skies hold secrets we are not yet ready to hear. Whether or not ancient visitors ever walked among us, the idea reshapes how we see both the past and the present. For if they came before, who is to say they will not come again? Military secrets, how world powers prepare for impossible threats. Behind the public face of diplomacy and politics, there are always hidden rooms, secure bunkers, locked briefing halls, and war rooms where governments discuss not just the threats they expect, but the ones they hope will never come. Among these impossible scenarios sits one of the strangest and most unsettling questions of all. What if an alien force ever came to Earth? It might sound like the stuff of science fiction, yet militaries around the world have at times acknowledged the possibility, however quietly. They may not expect a fleet of flying saucers to appear in the sky tomorrow, but strategy is about preparing for the unimaginable. And so, scattered among classified files and contingency planning, there exists a shadowy body of thought dedicated to the defense of Earth against unknowns. In the United States, the Department of Defense has historically been at the center of UFO discussions. For decades, pilots have reported objects that defy physics, craft accelerating at unimaginable speeds, hovering silently or vanishing without warning. Official explanations vary: weather balloons, atmospheric illusions, classified aircraft, but the persistence of these reports led to secret programs like Project Blue Book in the 1950s and, more recently, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP. Though much of what these projects uncovered remains under wraps, their very existence confirms that military minds take such phenomena seriously. To plan for an alien threat, militaries often draw comparisons to what they know: defense against superior technology on Earth. Imagine, for example, a naval fleet facing an enemy whose ships can move 3 times as fast and fire weapons far beyond their own range. The strategy in such a case would be deterrence, concealment, and survival, not confrontation. If alien craft are as advanced as sightings suggest, militaries would likely focus less on defeating them outright and more on preserving critical infrastructure, protecting leadership, and maintaining order in the face of public panic. Consider how nations treat nuclear weapons. The arsenals themselves are terrifying, but the greater focus lies in protocols: how to respond, how to communicate, how to prevent chaos if the unthinkable happens. An alien arrival, peaceful or hostile, would demand similar coordination. Who speaks for Earth? Who decides whether to respond with force or silence? Who ensures that panic does not unravel civilization before the visitors even act? These are not questions left to science fiction. They are whispered in strategic circles because leaving them unanswered is a risk no general wants to take. Then there are the conspiracies, the stories that military secrets go much further than contingency planning. Some claim that governments already possess alien technology, crashed craft hidden away in secure facilities, reverse-engineered weapons under development. The infamous Roswell incident of 1947 still looms large in this imagination. Was it truly a weather balloon, or was it the first sign of something far stranger, quickly hidden away? Believers argue that hidden knowledge allows militaries to prepare quietly, keeping the public unaware for fear of panic. Skeptics counter that secrecy creates myths where none exist. Still, secrecy has its logic. If the world's militaries knew of even one undeniable extraterrestrial artifact, revealing it would not simply answer questions. It would spark global uncertainty, force disclosures of classified programs, and potentially incite conflict between nations scrambling for control of the technology. In that sense, silence itself could be seen as a form of defense, not against the aliens, but against ourselves. Another layer of this hidden preparation lies in simulations. Military organizations run countless war games, testing responses to everything from cyber attacks to natural disasters. Some claim that scenarios involving unknown aerial phenomena have also been tested, not because anyone expects them, but because strategy thrives on imagination. A war game about alien invasion would reveal how fragile our systems are, how quickly communications break down, how easily fear spreads, how dependent we are on satellites that could be disrupted in an instant. And perhaps that is the greatest military secret of all, that the true threat of an alien arrival is not the visitors themselves, but the collapse of human order. A single, unexplained object hovering above a major city could bring markets crashing, spark riots, and pit nations against one another. In this sense, militaries prepare not only for battles in the sky, but for battles on the ground, against chaos, against fear, against ourselves. The question of how world powers prepare for impossible threats is less about science fiction than about psychology and control. Whether or not aliens ever come, the idea forces governments to confront uncomfortable truths. That our power is fragile, that our weapons may not protect us, and that unity may be our only real defense. And so, behind closed doors, plans are drawn, reports are written, and scenarios are imagined. Not because leaders expect to see alien craft tomorrow, but because the greatest secret in strategy is this: the impossible has a way of becoming possible, and when it does, only those who imagined it first will be ready. Alien technology beyond imagination, why even one ship could outmatch all of Earth. When people picture an alien invasion, the mind often leaps to science fiction images, massive armadas blotting out the sky, fleets of saucers or sleek vessels descending over every city at once. But in truth, if aliens ever came with hostile intent, they would not need an army. Even a single ship, built with knowledge far beyond ours, could outmatch all of Earth's militaries combined. To understand why, we only need to look at history. When steel warships first crossed oceans, they met wooden fleets that had no chance of survival. When early aircraft entered battle, armies still marching on foot were helpless against them. Time and again, the side with more advanced technology didn't just win. They redefined the battlefield so completely that the other side could barely respond. If this has been true between human civilizations only centuries apart in development, what would it mean if the gap stretched not centuries, but millennia or even millions of years? Imagine a ship capable of traveling between stars. By definition, such a vessel would already be beyond our comprehension. To cross the gulfs of space, it would need propulsion we can only dream of. Perhaps antimatter engines, fusion drives, or technologies that bend space itself. To power such systems would require energy outputs that dwarf our entire planet's usage. And with that power, what kind of weaponry might be possible? A beam of concentrated energy could strike from orbit, faster than sound, unstoppable by our defenses. Even without weapons, the simple ability to manipulate gravity or magnetism could render our missiles useless, our aircraft grounded. If they mastered nanotechnology, they could release swarms of microscopic machines that disable electronics silently and invisibly. The frightening truth is that the gap in capability would be so wide, resistance might not even register as resistance to them. It would be like throwing stones at a hurricane. And yet, the real power of alien technology may not even lie in weapons. Consider their ability to observe. A single ship could map every detail of our planet in hours: cities, defenses, power grids. Our satellites take days or weeks to collect far less information. An alien vessel might do so in real time, watching every movement, listening to every signal, knowing our plans before we make them. Knowledge itself would become their greatest advantage. This raises another possibility: control without destruction. Why waste resources on war when technology allows subtle domination? A single ship might disable our satellites, cutting off communication. It could shut down power grids remotely, leaving entire nations in darkness. It could disrupt GPS signals, collapse financial markets, and bring societies to a halt without firing a single shot. The most terrifying invasion might not look like explosions in the sky, but silence on Earth, silence of our machines, our networks, our voices. Of course, there are those who argue that if aliens can cross the stars, they may not come as conquerors at all. With such power, what need would they have for our planet? But this assumes we understand their motives. History, again, gives us a warning. When explorers reached new lands, they often dismissed native peoples as primitive, and their resources became the only thing of value. To an alien intelligence, we might not even be seen as a threat or an enemy, only as a curiosity, an obstacle, or a resource ourselves. To put this into perspective, think of an ant colony. To us, ants are intricate, fascinating creatures, but if they build their nest where a road must go, their entire civilization is wiped away in seconds by machines they cannot comprehend. We do not hate the ants, we simply move them aside. In the same way, even one alien ship could view Earth as nothing more than a patch of ground in their way. Still, imagining such overwhelming power does more than frighten. It humbles us. It shows how fragile our pride in technology truly is. We boast of stealth fighters, nuclear arsenals, and sprawling armies, yet all of it would mean little in the shadow of a ship that has already achieved what we cannot: crossing the stars. The presence of even one such craft would change the world forever, regardless of its intent. If hostile, it could conquer without effort. If peaceful, it could transform us with knowledge we can barely imagine. Cures for diseases, limitless energy, pathways to the stars. One vessel, one visitor, could rewrite human destiny. And that is why, when we look up at the sky and wonder if anyone is out there, the possibility both terrifies and inspires. For in the faint glimmer of a single ship, humanity might see both its greatest threat and its greatest hope. The dark forest theory. What if Earth has already been marked? Imagine walking through a forest at night. The trees rise around you like silent walls. The ground is damp, and the air is heavy with unseen life. You hear no birds, no footsteps, not even the rustle of leaves. It feels wrong, too quiet, too still. And then the realization creeps in. The forest is not empty. It is full of hunters. They are silent, waiting, watching. In such a place, to call out, to shine a light, would be to invite danger. This is the image at the heart of the dark forest theory, one of the most chilling answers to the question of why the universe seems so silent. The theory suggests that every civilization is like a hunter in this cosmic forest. Each one knows that others may exist, but none can be sure of their intentions. To broadcast your presence, to shout into the night, is to risk attracting someone stronger, someone hostile. And so civilizations remain quiet. They do not call out, they wait, hidden in the dark. For decades, Earth has done the opposite. Our planet glows with radio signals, television broadcasts, radar pulses, and now powerful beams from scientific instruments. Since the early 20th century, Earth has been leaking its presence into space like a lantern in the night. To us, these transmissions seem faint and harmless, but to a listener with sensitive instruments, more advanced than anything we can imagine, they would stand out against the background of the galaxy like a flare in the woods. If the dark forest theory is correct, then Earth has not gone unnoticed. We may already have been marked. Our signals may have betrayed us to watchers who prefer silence, who now see us as noisy newcomers disrupting the quiet. It is an unsettling thought that somewhere in the blackness between stars, someone knows we are here. This idea is not without precedent in our own history. When explorers crossed oceans, they often found lands where tribes lived in isolation. Sometimes contact brought trade and curiosity. Other times, it brought conquest and devastation. The tribes that remained unseen, hidden deep in forests or deserts, often survived longer than those who revealed themselves too openly. If Earth is the noisy tribe of the galaxy, what fate might await us? Some imagine watchers already nearby. What if interstellar objects like Oumuamua or 3I Atlas were not random debris, but probes? Quiet scouts sent to investigate the source of our transmissions. Their strange shapes, their odd movements, their fleeting passages might not be accidents at all, but part of a long, silent survey. They need not attack, not yet. To mark Earth may only mean to take note, to file our presence away for later. Others picture something more immediate. If the galaxy truly is a dark forest, then survival depends on preemptive strikes, eliminating potential threats before they grow too strong. In that light, humanity's noisy broadcasts could be seen not as harmless chatter, but as warning signs, proof that we are advancing, building, and perhaps one day capable of spreading ourselves beyond our world. For a cautious civilization, marking Earth might be the first step toward deciding whether to extinguish or to ignore us. Of course, not all interpretations are so grim. To be marked might not mean targeted for destruction. It could mean catalogued, observed, noted as a young species not yet ready for contact. The watchers in the forest may not be hunters, but cautious guardians. They wait to see what we will become, not because they fear us, but because they know how disruptive contact could be. For us, even the faintest whisper from the stars would shatter our sense of isolation forever. Still, the silence grows heavier when seen through this lens. The absence of signals from the stars may not mean emptiness. It may mean discipline, a collective understanding among civilizations that silence is survival. And in breaking that silence, Earth has already set itself apart. There is a strange duality in this thought. On one side lies fear, that we have already drawn unwanted attention. On the other lies awe, that our small, fragile planet may already be part of someone else's map of the galaxy, a glowing point marked inhabited by watchers we will never see. Like the forest at night, the universe holds its secrets in silence. Whether that silence hides danger or patience, no one can yet say. But the dark forest. Theory lingers in the back of our minds, whispering that perhaps the quiet skies are not empty at all, that perhaps the hunters are already listening, and that Earth's voice has carried farther than we ever intended. Contact or conquest, would they arrive in peace or as predators? If aliens were ever to appear in our skies, one of the most haunting questions would not be how they got here, but why. What would motivate a civilization advanced enough to cross the gulfs between stars? Would they extend a hand of friendship, seeking dialogue and exchange? Or would their arrival mark the beginning of conquest, the end of Earth's sovereignty? History offers us sobering lessons. When human civilizations have encountered one another across oceans and continents, the outcomes have rarely been balanced. More often, the technologically advanced dominated the less advanced. Columbus did not bring mutual exchange to the Americas. He brought disease, colonization, and centuries of upheaval. The British Empire did not merely trade with remote islands, it absorbed them, reshaping their cultures forever. If this is the pattern we know on Earth, why would it be different among the stars? And yet, some argue that true intelligence may come hand in hand with compassion. A species capable of surviving long enough to master interstellar travel may have outgrown conquest. After all, cooperation is often what allows civilizations to endure. On Earth, peace has enabled great leaps forward in science and art. Perhaps alien visitors, if they come, would view violence as primitive, a stage of development they left behind ages ago, but we cannot assume their values mirror our own. What if their ethics are as alien as their biology? What if conquest, to them, is not cruelty but instinct, as natural as a lion hunting its prey? Earth might not appear to them as a world full of people and culture, but simply as a resource-rich planet, a convenient harbour in the cosmic sea. Our oceans, our atmosphere, even our very biology might be of interest, but not our ideas, not our hopes. Another possibility lies between peace and conquest, indifference. Imagine if they arrive not with weapons or handshakes, but with a detachment so complete that we are neither enemies nor allies, but background noise. To an intelligence millions of years ahead, humanity might appear no more threatening or significant than ants at the edge of a picnic. Their ships could descend not to attack, but to take what they need, moving on without malice or acknowledgement, as though we weren't even there. Still, the dream of contact remains powerful. We imagine emissaries stepping forward to share knowledge, cures for diseases, solutions to energy crises, pathways to the stars. We dream of a galactic community where Earth takes its place among others, no longer isolated in the void. This vision, hopeful and generous, has inspired generations of scientists and storytellers. Yet even in this vision, danger lurks. A gift of technology could be as destabilizing as an invasion. Imagine what humanity might do if handed limitless power overnight. Would we unite, or would we tear ourselves apart fighting over who controls it? And what of the signals we already send? For more than a century, Earth has been broadcasting into space, radio, television, radar. Some scientists argue that if an advanced civilization noticed these signals, they might see us as intelligent enough to be worth contacting. Others fear the opposite, that they might see us as an emerging threat, a species loud enough to be noticed but still vulnerable enough to be silenced. The choice between contact and conquest may not even be ours to make. It lies in the perspective of those who come, and therein lies the mystery. Every possibility is both thrilling and terrifying. Perhaps one night the sky will bloom with lights not of stars, but of ships. Crowds will gather in streets, governments will scramble, scientists will strain to understand, and in that moment we will face the question written across our myths and histories. Are they here as friends or as predators? For now, the silence leaves the answer unknown. But silence itself is not neutrality. It is the pause before the curtain rises, the breath before the first word is spoken. And when the day comes that the universe breaks its quiet, we will discover whether the visitors come with open hands or with clenched fists. The role of religion, how faiths across the world would interpret their arrival. If one day the skies filled with lights not belonging to any plane, rocket or satellite, the first questions people might ask would not only be scientific or political. For billions, the first response would be spiritual. What does this mean? How does this fit into the story of creation, destiny, and the divine? The arrival of aliens, whether peaceful or hostile, would not only test our governments, but also the foundations of our religions. Throughout history, faiths have wrestled with the possibility of others. In Christianity, humanity is seen as created in the image of God, unique, chosen, set apart. But what happens if we learn that other beings, with minds and perhaps souls of their own, also exist? Would they be part of God's plan? Would they share in salvation? Or would their existence challenge the idea that humanity has a central place in the universe? For some believers, alien life could be woven seamlessly into their theology, evidence that creation is even grander than they imagined. For others, it could feel like a rupture, a threat to the idea of human uniqueness. Islam, too, speaks of Allah as the creator of worlds, plural. Some scholars point to this language as leaving room for the existence of other beings, beings who might live and worship in their own ways under the same divine order. In Hinduism, the cosmos is already vast, layered, filled with gods, spirits, and realms beyond human sight. To many Hindus, the discovery of aliens might not feel like a contradiction at all, but another expression of the endless, cyclical universe. Buddhism, with its emphasis on awareness, compassion, and cycles of life, offers another perspective. If aliens arrived, they would be seen not as theological threats, but as fellow beings on the path of existence, subject to suffering and impermanence. In this view, the question would not be, do they fit into our doctrine, but how should we treat them, with compassion or with fear? Other traditions, often dismissed as myth by modern society, might suddenly gain new relevance. Indigenous stories from North America speak of sky people, beings who descended to share wisdom. Legends from Africa describe visitors from the heavens shaping human destiny. Ancient texts from Mesopotamia and India describe flying chariots, celestial beings, and battles in the sky. If aliens appeared tomorrow, many would turn to these stories and say, "We have been telling you all along." And yet, religion is not only a source of comfort, it can also be a source of division. Different groups may interpret the same event in wildly different ways. Some might see alien arrival as a test of faith, even a deception, a false sign meant to lead believers astray. Others might see it as prophecy fulfilled, the long-awaited return of divine messengers. In moments of uncertainty, such differences could spark unity or conflict. Consider how people reacted to the Copernican revolution, when Earth was dethroned from the center of the cosmos. For some, it was a revelation of God's grandeur. For others, it was a crisis of belief. An alien arrival could be that revolution magnified 100-fold. Priests, imams, rabbis, monks, and shamans would all face questions with no easy answers. Do aliens have souls? Do they pray? Did they know God before us? Are we brothers and sisters under the same creation, or are we strangers in a universe of many faiths? And then there is the possibility of how aliens themselves might respond to religion. Would they recognize our prayers as primitive echoes of truths they too once grappled with? Would they carry their own spiritual traditions, alien scriptures, alien rituals shaped by other suns? Or would they look upon us with indifference, seeing no need for faith in a universe they already command with technology? Religion has always been humanity's compass in the dark, guiding us through fear, hope, and wonder. If the skies one day filled with ships, religion would again rise to meet the moment, offering explanations, warnings, and solace. For some, the arrival would deepen belief, proving that creation is even more magnificent than we dared dream. For others, it would fracture certainty, leaving only doubt where once there was faith. Yet, across traditions, one truth runs constant. Humanity has always looked upward, searching for meaning in the stars. Whether through telescopes or temples, equations or prayers, we have sought to understand our place beneath the heavens. If aliens came tomorrow, the role of religion would not vanish. It would grow, adapting, reshaping, and reminding us that in the face of the unknown, we have always turned our eyes skyward, hoping to see not just others, but ourselves reflected in the vastness above. The alien diseases hypothesis. Could invasion come not with weapons, but with microbes? When we imagine an alien invasion, our minds often leap to ships, lasers, and overwhelming displays of power. But what if the greatest danger didn't arrive in metal and fire? What if the threat was invisible, so small it could not be seen with the naked eye, yet powerful enough to sweep through cities, nations, even the entire planet? This is the unsettling possibility behind the alien diseases hypothesis, that invasion could come not with weapons, but with microbes. On Earth, history already gives us examples of how devastating new diseases can be. When European explorers reached the Americas, they carried with them smallpox, measles, and influenza, illnesses against which indigenous peoples had no immunity. The result was catastrophic. Entire civilizations weakened or destroyed, not by swords or muskets, but by invisible agents of death. If such devastation can occur between members of the same species on the same planet, what would happen if microbes from an alien world entered Earth's delicate ecosystem? In one sense, alien microbes might not be able to infect us at all. Life on Earth is built from DNA and RNA, using a genetic code shared by all organisms. Alien life, born under different suns and conditions, could be so different biochemically that its microbes might find our bodies inhospitable. Their enzymes might not work in our temperatures, their proteins might not bind to ours, their structures might fall apart in our fluids. By this logic, the greatest danger would not be infection, but toxicity. Alien microbes could still release chemicals lethal to us, not out of malice, but simply as a byproduct of their alien biology. But what if, by some dark twist of chance, alien microbes could adapt? If their structures bore even a faint resemblance to ours, they might exploit vulnerabilities we never knew existed. Imagine a microscopic invader immune to all our antibiotics, unrecognizable to our immune system, spreading silently until it was too late. Our hospitals, already strained by earthborne pandemics, would be powerless against something that broke all the rules of our medicine. This scenario becomes even more frightening when combined with intent. What if the microbes did not arrive by accident, carried on drifting rocks or alien soil, but by design? An advanced species might see biological warfare as the most efficient form of conquest. Why send fleets and risk losses when a single vial released into Earth's atmosphere could topple civilizations? The weapons would be invisible, unstoppable, and deniable. From orbit they could simply wait, watching as cities emptied, power grids went dark, and humanity struggled against an enemy it could not even see. And yet it is also possible that aliens themselves might fear our microbes. Earth is teeming with bacteria and viruses, honed by billions of years of evolution to survive in every possible environment. From boiling vents on the ocean floor to the frozen poles, to aliens, our planet might seem like a death trap, filled with microscopic predators they have no defense against. In this view, an invasion would be suicidal unless they found a way to sterilize or shield themselves entirely. Perhaps that is why we do not see visitors openly. They know the real battlefield is not in the sky, but in the soil, the water, and the air. Science fiction has long played with this idea. In H.G. Wells's The War of the Worlds, the Martian invaders are ultimately defeated not by human armies, but by Earth's microbes, to which they have no immunity. The story is a reminder that the smallest forms of life can be the greatest equalizers. If aliens brought their diseases to us, or if we shared ours with them, the result could be as deadly as any weapon. There is also a quieter possibility that alien microbes may already have reached Earth. Meteorites knocked loose from Mars have landed here before, carrying with them the building blocks of life. If rocks can travel between planets, could they not also carry dormant organisms across the stars? Perhaps life on Earth was seeded this way, part of a cosmic exchange of biology. If so, then invasion by microbes may not be a future threat, but part of our very origin story. The alien diseases. Hypothesis does not rely on firepower or spectacle. It whispers a more unsettling truth, that survival often depends not on who has the biggest weapons, but on who is most prepared for the smallest ones. If aliens ever came, their most dangerous tools might not be ships or beams of light, but invisible armies carried quietly across the void. And in this possibility, we glimpse a reminder of our own fragility. We have always feared the sky for what might descend from it, yet sometimes the deadliest invaders are the ones too small to see. Messages in the static, mysterious signals that some claim were warnings. Long before the first photograph of a black hole or the dazzling images of galaxies from the James Webb Telescope, humanity's ears were already pressed against the void. Radio telescopes, massive dishes pointed toward the heavens, were built to catch whispers from the cosmos. And sometimes, within the endless hiss and crackle of static, something unusual has been heard. Strange bursts, odd rhythms, signals that stand apart from the background noise. To some, these were simply natural phenomena waiting to be explained. To others, they were warnings. The most famous of these came in 1977. At Ohio State University's Big Ear Radio Telescope, a researcher monitoring the data stream noticed a sharp spike in intensity, so precise and so distinct from random background noise that he circled it in red pen and wrote just one word in the margin: "Wow." For 72 seconds, the universe seemed to speak, and then it went silent. The wow signal has never repeated, and despite decades of attempts to explain it, comets, satellites, cosmic noise, it remains mysterious. For believers, it was not only a message, but perhaps a warning, a simple, fleeting knock on the door to let us know, you are not alone. Over the years, other signals have surfaced, each sparking its own wave of speculation. Short, repeating bursts known as fast radio bursts, FRBS, were first discovered in 2007. They last only milliseconds, but release more energy than the sun emits in days. Most scientists attribute them to natural cosmic events, magnetars, collapsing stars, but the precision and power of some bursts have led others to imagine technology at work. A few even speculate they could be beacons, attempts to guide or to warn civilizations across space. Beyond radio telescopes, there are the countless anecdotes of intercepted signals. Military operators during the Cold War claim to have detected strange transmissions on frequencies that should have been empty. Amateur radio enthusiasts report picking up rhythms in the static, pulses, tones, patterns too regular to be dismissed. Each time, skeptics point to interference, malfunction, or misinterpretation. Yet the persistence of these stories fuels a darker possibility, that the messages are real, but not meant for comfort. What if the signals are not invitations, but cautions? A coded reminder that space is not safe, that speaking too loudly risks drawing predators. Imagine, for instance, a civilization destroyed by a more powerful neighbor. In its last moments, it broadcasts into the dark, not a cry for help, but a warning etched into energy. Stay quiet. They are listening. By the time it reaches us, centuries or millennia may have passed, the senders long gone, but the message, embedded in the static, remains. The unsettling part is that we may not even recognize the warnings for what they are. To us, they could appear as nothing more than anomalies, bursts of noise in the data, but to another intelligence, they might read as clearly as words on a page. Like a hiker stumbling across a pattern of stones on a trail, we may not see that the arrangement means danger ahead. and in failing to understand, we might miss the very advice that could save us. There are also theories that our own broadcasts have been answered, subtly, briefly, easily overlooked. Radio waves from Earth have been leaking into space for over a century. News broadcasts, music, radar pulses, television shows. Some argue that if others noticed, they may have replied in kind, sending signals buried in the noise of our skies. But if the replies came as short bursts or strange distortions, would we even recognize them as messages? Perhaps the greatest mystery is not the signals themselves, but their silence. For every wow or fast burst, there are thousands of hours of empty static. Maybe this emptiness is the real warning that the galaxy is quiet because it must be quiet, and those who spoke too loudly are gone. When we turn our ears to the stars, we expect discovery, connection, maybe even friendship. But the universe may be whispering something else, a reminder that survival sometimes depends on silence. And if the signals we've caught so far are warnings, then they are less about communication and more about survival. Echoes in the static, telling us to listen carefully, but to speak less. The shadow of Roswell, why one 1947 event still fuels invasion fears. In the summer of 1947, on a quiet ranch outside the small town of Roswell, New Mexico, something fell from the sky. At first, the local military base issued a statement saying they had recovered a flying disc. Newspapers across the United States printed the words in bold headlines, but within 24 hours, the story changed. It wasn't a disc at all, officials said, but a weather balloon. The correction was swift, absolute, and for many, suspicious. Thus began what would become one of the most enduring mysteries of the modern era, the Roswell incident, a story that still casts its shadow across every conversation about alien life and the possibility of invasion. Why does Roswell matter so much, even more than 7 decades later? Partly because of timing. The Second World War had ended only 2 years earlier. Nuclear weapons had just been unleashed on the world, and the Cold War was beginning. Humanity was standing at the edge of new power and new fear, and into that atmosphere came the rumor of something not of this earth. A flying disc, a crash, military secrecy. It was the perfect spark for speculation. For believers, Roswell was never about balloons. Eyewitnesses claimed strange wreckage was recovered, materials lighter than aluminum but impossible to dent or burn. Some said they saw symbols etched into the fragments, markings unlike any language known. Others whispered about bodies, small, humanoid forms quickly taken away by the military, sealed in crates, never seen again. Though the Air Force denied it all, the stories multiplied, retold in books, documentaries, and late-night radio shows. For skeptics, the truth is simpler. What fell at Roswell was part of Project Mogul, a top-secret program designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests using high-altitude balloons. The secrecy, they argue, explains the military's conflicting statements. But here lies the paradox. Secrecy designed to protect national security only deepened suspicion. If officials would lie about one thing, why not another? And so Roswell grew larger than the event itself. It became a symbol of the belief that governments know more about extraterrestrials than they admit. It seeded the idea of hidden vaults, of laboratories where alien wreckage and perhaps even alien bodies are studied in secret. It became the foundation of an entire culture of distrust, a culture that looks at every light in the sky and wonders, are we seeing another Roswell unfold in real time? The shadow of Roswell also lingers because it ties directly into our fear of invasion. If the debris was not a balloon but a craft, then it means Earth was already visited once, and not by choice. A crash suggests vulnerability, but also proximity. Whatever was out there had come close enough to enter our skies, close enough to fall to our soil. If it happened once, What stops it from happening again? Culturally, Roswell became the birthplace of the modern alien narrative. Flying saucers, government cover-ups, secret bases, these all gained momentum in the wake of 1947. Even today, when people picture an alien invasion, the mental images often carry the fingerprints of Roswell. A disc-shaped craft, a desert crash site, military trucks racing to contain the scene. Hollywood films from The X-Files to Independence Day owe their DNA to that hot New Mexico summer. But beneath the spectacle, Roswell speaks to something deeper, a sense that humanity is not in control of the skies, that in spite of our radar, our jets, and our nuclear weapons, there may be forces moving above us that we cannot stop, cannot predict, and cannot understand. Whether the event was a balloon, a Soviet test gone wrong, or something stranger, the fact that it was cloaked in confusion left a permanent scar. Every rumor of UFO crashes since, whether in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania in 1965 or in the deserts of Nevada, carries Roswell's shadow. Each time, the script feels familiar: a strange object, military secrecy, witnesses silenced, explanations that raise more questions than they answer. And so, Roswell lives on, not just as a story of what happened in 1947, but as a framework through which we interpret every new mystery. It fuels the belief that invasion is not only possible, but perhaps already underway, hidden in files we cannot see, covered by words like weather balloon and classified. The shadow of Roswell is long because it is not only about aliens, it is about trust, secrecy, and the unsettling idea that if something truly extraordinary entered our skies, the last people to know the truth might be the public. In that gap between what we are told and what we imagine, fear grows, and with it, the lingering suspicion that Roswell was never just an incident, but the first page of a story still unfolding above us. Alien mind games. Could invasion start with psychological manipulation? When most people think of invasion, they imagine fire in the sky, ships appearing in orbit, weapons unleashed upon cities, chaos unfolding in a matter of hours. But what if a truly advanced species never needed to fire a shot? What if their first strike came not against our defenses, but against our minds? This is the unsettling possibility of alien psychological manipulation, the idea that conquest could begin not with force, but with subtle influence, bending humanity from the inside. The notion is not as far-fetched as it sounds. On Earth, even without alien help, psychological warfare has long been a powerful tool. Propaganda has toppled governments. Fear has broken armies before battles even began. Disinformation has reshaped entire societies. If humans can manipulate each other so effectively with words, images, and ideas, imagine what a civilization thousands or millions of years ahead could do with tools designed to target the human mind itself. Consider dreams. Throughout history, people have described vivid encounters in sleep, strange beings, visions of lights, whispers of messages they could not explain. Some dismiss these as fantasy, others claim them as experiences of alien abduction. But what if these dreams were not accidents of imagination at all, but carefully engineered signals? If an advanced species could project thoughts, suggestions, even emotions into our subconscious, they would not need to land armies on our soil. They could plant seeds of fear, obedience, or division directly where we are most vulnerable, inside our own perceptions. Then there is the possibility of manipulation through technology. Earth is already blanketed by signals, radio, television, internet transmissions bouncing off satellites and fiber optic cables. An alien presence could, in theory, slip into these systems, introducing patterns or frequencies that affect our brains in ways we don't fully understand. Certain sound frequencies can alter mood. Flickering light can trigger seizures. If aliens mastered such tools, they might amplify emotions, fear, anger, hopelessness on a global scale, pushing societies toward collapse without ever firing a weapon. Imagine a sudden wave of panic spreading worldwide with no clear source. Crowds rushing into the streets, markets crashing, governments scrambling to maintain control, all triggered by whispers in the background of our media, patterns so subtle we never notice them consciously, yet powerful enough to bend the course of nations. There is also the unnerving idea of false visions. What if ships did not need to appear in the sky at all? What if humanity could be made to believe they had arrived? Advanced manipulation of perception could create mass hallucinations, lights in the sky, figures descending, even voices proclaiming messages. The result would be chaos, some worshipping the arrival as gods, others rallying to resist, while the truth remained hidden. The invasion would not be of Earth, but of our trust in reality itself. Science fiction has explored this idea for decades, but so have conspiracy theories. Some point to strange incidents of mass sightings, entire towns claiming to have seen ships, lights, or beings. Were these simply misinterpretations of natural phenomena, or tests of something more? Even if such claims are exaggerated, they reveal a deeper truth. Humanity is already susceptible to suggestion. Our minds are quick to see patterns, to link events, to believe stories when enough people tell them. An alien strategist would need only to nudge that tendency slightly to reshape entire societies. It's also possible that the manipulation could be more personal. Instead of targeting entire populations, imagine if select leaders, presidents, generals, influential scientists began to hear voices not their own. Quiet suggestions guiding their decisions, sowing mistrust between allies, planting hesitation at crucial moments. Wars have been won on Earth not by force, but by deception. In a galactic context, subtle whispers might achieve what no weapon could. Of course, skeptics would argue that such control is impossible, that the mind is too complex, too deeply rooted in biology to be swayed so directly. But think of how easily our emotions already shift with music, how quickly fear spreads through a crowd, how often we doubt our own memories. The brain is powerful, but it is also fragile. An intelligence capable of crossing the stars might see it not as an unbreakable fortress, but as an open door. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of this possibility is that we might not even realize it was happening. If the invasion began with psychological manipulation, there would be no dramatic announcement, no obvious moment when they arrived. It would feel instead like a change in the air, an age of unrest, distrust, and division growing stronger, unexplained but undeniable. We might look at each other as the threat, never realizing the true puppeteers were pulling strings from beyond the sky. An alien invasion of the mind would leave no ruins, no battlefields, no fleets in orbit, but it would leave something far more lasting, a humanity reshaped without ever knowing it had been conquered. And perhaps that is the deepest fear, not that they would come with fire, but that they would come quietly, until the difference between our own thoughts and theirs could no longer be told apart. Hybrid agendas, the theories of abductions, experiments, and hidden offspring. Among the most unsettling claims in the realm of alien encounters are not the lights in the sky or the strange signals in the static, but the stories whispered in the dark by those who believe they have been taken. These are the abduction accounts, testimonies of people who describe being pulled from their homes, their cars, or even their beds, subjected to experiments aboard otherworldly craft. For decades, such stories have formed the foundation of one of the most controversial and frightening ideas in UFO lore, the hybrid agenda. The theory suggests that alien visitors are not here simply to observe us, nor to conquer us in open war, but to use us, to blend their biology with ours, creating a new kind of being. Why? The answers vary. Some believe the aliens themselves are dying out, their genetic diversity exhausted after eons of existence, and that they need fresh DNA to survive. Others whisper of a program to slowly replace humanity with hybrids who look like us, but whose minds and loyalties belong elsewhere. Accounts of abductions often share eerie similarities. Victims describe bright lights flooding their rooms, paralysis that leaves them unable to move or cry out, and beings with large eyes leaning over them. They speak of being examined with strange instruments, samples taken of skin, blood, or reproductive material. Some even claim to have seen rooms filled with hybrid children, part human, part something else, staring at them with an unsettling familiarity. To those who believe these testimonies, the hybrid agenda is not a theory, but a reality unfolding in secret. Psychologists offer explanations rooted in the mind. Sleep paralysis, they argue, can produce vivid hallucinations of figures in the room. Memories can be distorted, dreams mistaken for reality. Yet these explanations do not erase the uncanny consistencies across cultures, languages, and generations. How do so many unrelated people describe the same scenes, the same procedures, the same haunting sense that something was taken from them? The idea of hybrids also carries symbolic weight. Humanity has always told stories of beings born from unions between gods and mortals, half-human, half-divine figures who stand at the threshold between worlds. From Hercules in Greek myth to the Nephilim described in the Book of Genesis, the motif of hybrids has long haunted our imagination. In this sense, the modern abduction stories may be a continuation of an ancient archetype, the belief that outsiders come not just to watch us, but to mingle with us, to change us from within. Some conspiracy theorists take the idea further. They suggest that hybrids are already among us, hidden in plain sight, indistinguishable from humans until certain traits reveal themselves. They point to stories of individuals with unusual abilities, strange auras, or memories of places they have never been. To skeptics, these are coincidences, the product of imagination and suggestion. To believers, they are evidence that the hybrid agenda has already passed from theory to reality. There is also the question of motive. If aliens are creating hybrids, what is their endgame? Is it survival, ensuring their species continues by merging with ours? Is it colonization, planting seeds of themselves within humanity until the line between us and them disappears? Or could it be something stranger still, a way of bridging the gap between civilizations, creating beings who can move between worlds and serve as intermediaries? Science itself does not rule out the possibility of hybridization, at least in principle. On Earth, species as different as lions and tigers, horses and donkeys, can sometimes interbreed, creating hybrids like ligers and mules. Genetic engineering has already allowed humans to insert DNA from one species into another, creating organisms that blur the boundaries of life. If we can achieve this with our limited tools, what might a civilization millions of years older be capable of? And yet, the hybrid agenda frightens not only because of what it implies about aliens, but because of what it implies about us. To imagine that we could be used not as equals but as resources is to imagine a loss of sovereignty over our very bodies. Wars over land and power are one thing, but what happens when the battlefield is human DNA itself? Perhaps the strangest part of the hybrid narrative is the way it lingers on intimacy. Unlike stories of fleets in the sky or weapons from orbit, abduction tales are deeply personal. They happen in bedrooms, in lonely stretches of highway, in the most vulnerable corners of human life. They suggest that invasion, if it comes, may not begin with cities in flames, but with quiet encounters in the night, encounters that leave no trace except memory, fear, and perhaps something else growing in the shadows of our species. Whether these accounts are true, misunderstood, or symbolic, the hybrid agenda remains one of the most chilling ideas in the mythology of alien contact. It suggests that the line between human and alien may already be blurring, and that the invasion, if it exists, may not come from the skies at all, but from within ourselves. Weapons of the unknown, how alien arsenals might defy physics itself. When we imagine alien weapons, it is tempting to picture familiar tools made more advanced, bigger bombs, sharper projectiles, brighter beams of light. But if a civilization has mastered interstellar travel, their approach to warfare may not resemble anything we know. Their arsenals could exploit forces we barely understand, bending the very laws of physics as we perceive them. To us, such weapons would seem less like machines of war and more like the magic of gods. Consider how far Earth itself has come in just a short span of time. Less than 200 years ago, battles were fought with muskets and bayonets. Today, militaries experiment with directed energy weapons and quantum communication. Now imagine a civilization that has been advancing not for centuries, but for tens of thousands or millions of years. Their weapons might not just outmatch ours, they might operate on principles we cannot yet imagine. One possibility often raised is the use of directed energy, weapons that focus light, microwaves, or radiation into devastating beams. Earth already experiments with such technology, but only at small scales. An alien arsenal could take this to extremes, ships in orbit firing invisible pulses that fry electronics worldwide, or beams that slice through armor as easily as sunlight cuts through morning fog. To us, the sky might look unchanged until our machines simply stopped working. Even more unsettling are the possibilities rooted in gravity and space-time. If aliens can cross light years, they may have learned to manipulate gravity itself. A weapon that warps the space around its target could crush structures instantly or tear apart ships without firing a single shot. Imagine a city imploding, not from explosives, but from the sudden collapse of the space it occupies. No smoke, no flames, just silence where life once stood. Then there are the theories of quantum weaponry. Quantum entanglement allows particles to influence each other across vast distances. If this principle could be harnessed on a macroscopic scale, alien technology might strike targets without even needing to travel through space. A weapon could simply be in two places at once, its effects delivered instantaneously. How could Earth possibly defend against something that strikes before it can even be detected? Others speculate about biological or nanotechnological weapons. Instead of brute force, aliens might unleash swarms of self-replicating machines, smaller than grains of sand, capable of dismantling structures, molecule by molecule. A bridge, a tank, or even a human body could be undone, not with explosions, but with quiet disassembly at the atomic level. Invasion in this form would not look like war. It would look like decay, an invisible corrosion spreading until nothing recognizable remained. The chilling truth is that alien weapons might not even be designed with us in mind. They could be tools originally built for other purposes, mining asteroids, reshaping planets, or defending against cosmic dangers. A beam intended to carve stone might vaporize cities. A shield designed to deflect radiation might render all our weapons useless. To us, every tool they wield could become a weapon simply by its scale and power. History warns us of this pattern. When gunpowder first appeared, it was not created to topple empires. It was meant for fireworks, for celebration. Yet, it became the cornerstone of war. If alien civilizations have their own equivalents of discovery, their fireworks may already be far beyond anything our military could endure. But perhaps the greatest alien weapon of all would be one we cannot even recognize as such. Imagine a device that alters thought, sowing fear, division, or surrender before any battle begins. Imagine a weapon that does not destroy buildings, but collapses societies from within. Technology advanced enough could bypass physical war entirely, bending humanity without firing a single shot. If alien weapons defy physics as we know it, then even our imagination falls short. To us, they would appear miraculous, unstoppable, inevitable. The battlefield would not be equal, it would not even be recognizable, and in this lies the true fear. Not simply that alien arsenals could overwhelm us, but that we might never even understand how. We would not see missiles or lasers streaking across the sky. We might only see effects, the sudden silence of our machines, the crumbling of our defenses, the quiet unraveling of our world, delivered by weapons of the unknown. Cities under siege. What an invasion would look like in the modern world. If alien ships appeared in our skies tomorrow, the battle would not begin in distant deserts or isolated mountain ranges. It would unfold over our cities, the beating hearts of human civilization. New York, London, Tokyo, Los Angeles, Beijing, Paris, places that glow brightest when seen from orbit, would become the first targets, not because of what they hold, but because of what they represent. In the modern world, to control cities is to control humanity itself. Unlike the ancient past, when wars were fought on open fields, today's cities are hubs of power, infrastructure, and communication. They are dense webs of roads, bridges, power plants, water systems, and networks of digital information. Shut down a city and you don't just stop its people, you ripple shockwaves through the entire global system. An alien invasion, no matter how advanced or subtle, would almost certainly begin with urban centers. Picture New York City on a clear summer evening. Crowds flood Times Square, screens glow with ads, traffic hums along Fifth Avenue. Suddenly, the lights flicker. Every billboard, every phone, every car stalls. The subways grind to a halt. At first, people might think it's just a blackout. But then the silence deepens. No radio, no internet, no television. Panic spreads like wildfire as people realize the city hasn't just lost power, it has been disconnected. Above, a silent object hovers, blotting out the stars, its outline faint against the night sky. No weapons fired, no explosions. Yet the siege has begun. Other cities might fall differently. In some, the skies could rain beams of light that slice through infrastructure, bridges collapsing as if cut by invisible hands. In others, nothing would visibly happen at all. People would simply lose control of the world around them. Cars stopping mid-traffic, elevators stuck between floors, planes grounded not by force but by the sudden erasure of GPS. An alien siege might not look like Hollywood's thunderous destruction, but like a suffocating stillness, a sudden reminder that we are no longer in charge of our own machines. And yet, the chaos would not stop with technology. Cities are fragile ecosystems of human psychology. With power gone and communication cut, fear would become the most powerful weapon. Supermarkets stripped bare in hours. Highways choked with people trying to escape, though there would be nowhere to run. Hospitals overwhelmed, not by casualties of war, but by desperation. Children with asthma inhalers gone, patients in need of power for life support machines. The siege would not only be external, but internal, society unraveling under its own weight. Governments would struggle to respond. Military jets might scramble, but what could they do against ships that cross the stars? A few missiles fired, streaking upward, would vanish into silence. Some might even explode mid-air, intercepted before reaching their targets. Leaders would go on television, if the television still worked, urging calm, promising safety. But in the streets, people would see the truth. Safety was no longer theirs to promise. History gives us a chilling preview. During World War II, cities like London and Berlin endured nights of bombings, skies filled with fire. And yet, Those battles were waged with technology we understood: planes, bombs, firepower. An alien siege would bring something far stranger. Instead of fire raining from the sky, there might be beams that melt steel without flame, or pulses that silence whole blocks without leaving a scratch. To the people below, it would feel like magic or judgment. Perhaps the most terrifying aspect would be the invisibility of it all. What if the ships didn't even appear in the sky, but instead hung higher, invisible to the naked eye, shutting down cities one by one with precision? To the citizens below, it would feel as if the world itself was betraying them, as though the very fabric of reality had turned against their will to survive. And then there is the question of control. A siege is not always about destruction. Sometimes it is about bending the enemy to submission, starving them of resources until they surrender. Imagine cities where food deliveries never arrive, where fuel pumps no longer work, where water pressure fades to a trickle. Imagine citizens reduced not by explosions, but by slow, grinding despair. An alien siege could last days or decades, and humanity might not even realize it was happening until it was too late. And yet, even under siege, cities would resist. Humans have always resisted. Just as Londoners huddled in underground stations during the Blitz, people might gather in basements and subway tunnels, whispering stories, clinging to hope. Just as cities rebuilt themselves after fires, earthquakes, and wars, there would be those who refuse to surrender, who light candles in the darkness and declare, "We are still here." What an alien siege would look like is both terrifying and deeply human. It would not be only about the alien ships in the sky, but about our reactions below, our fear, our courage, our chaos, our unity. The siege would not only test our technology, but our spirit. And perhaps that is the most haunting thought of all, that the real battlefield might not be the streets of our cities, but the fragile will of the people who call them home. The collapse of systems, how fragile power grids, satellites, and the internet would fail. Modern civilization rests on invisible threads. We rarely see them, rarely think about them, but they are always there. Hum of electricity through the grid, satellites orbiting above, signals bouncing across oceans, servers glowing in quiet warehouses. These are the lifelines of the modern world, and they are fragile. If an alien invasion were to begin, one of the first and most effective blows would not be against armies or weapons, but against these invisible systems. Cut the threads, and the web of modern life unravels. Consider the power grid. In America, a single storm can plunge millions into darkness. Transformers fail, lines snap, and suddenly cities that glitter at night go black. Now imagine a deliberate strike, not of wind or ice, but of something far beyond human engineering, an electromagnetic pulse that ripples silently across entire states. Lights flicker and die, refrigerators hum to a stop, water pumps fall silent. At first, people might light candles and wait, assuming the blackout will be fixed by morning. But as hours stretch into days, food begins to spoil, hospitals run out of backup fuel, and cities start to panic. The aliens wouldn't need to fire weapons, they'd simply let the darkness do their work. Above Earth, the satellites we take for granted are even more vulnerable. We use them for everything: GPS navigation, weather forecasting, international calls, military coordination. With a single pulse of energy or a beam invisible to the human eye, alien technology could wipe out or disable these delicate machines. The skies would still look the same, but suddenly planes would fly blind, ships at sea would lose their bearings, and armies would stumble without their eyes in the sky. Even the simplest act, like finding the nearest hospital, would become uncertain without GPS. And then there is the internet. Though we think of it as vast and indestructible, much of it depends on physical infrastructure, undersea cables, server farms, and centralized providers. A disruption in satellites would already weaken it, but a direct assault could sever it completely. Imagine waking up to find no email, no social media, no online banking, no news. The digital chatter that connects billions would fall silent in an instant. The isolation itself would be terrifying. Even if cities still stood and armies still marched, without the internet, the modern world would feel as though it had already collapsed. History shows how quickly systems can fail. In 2003, a single fault in Ohio triggered a cascading power outage across the northeastern United States and Canada. 50 million people lost electricity, elevators froze, trains stalled, water systems faltered. And that was from one mistake in one region. Now picture alien technology capable of striking globally, turning that temporary disruption into a deliberate, calculated siege. Even more frightening is the possibility that the collapse might be invisible. Aliens wouldn't need to destroy physical infrastructure if they could infiltrate the networks themselves. Advanced code, far beyond human malware, could rewrite systems silently, turning satellites against us, redirecting power, locking us out of our own machines. To us, it would look like systems failing at random. Power here, internet there, a satellite blinking out, when in reality, it would be precision sabotage. The collapse of systems would not just cause inconvenience, it would unravel trust. In modern life, we assume stability, that when we flip a switch, light appears, that when we call a number, someone answers. Remove that trust, and fear spreads faster than fire. Cities would descend into chaos not because of alien ships above, but because the familiar hum of technology had fallen silent. The aliens might never need to set foot on Earth. They could watch as we collapsed under our own dependence, a civilization brought to its knees not by bombs or beams, but by silence in the wires, darkness in the cities, and the quiet stillness of a world unpowered. And in that silence, people would begin to realize how thin the line is between order and chaos, how easily the everyday miracles of electricity, communication, and connection can vanish. The collapse of systems would not simply be a tactic of war, it would be a reminder of just how fragile our modern world truly is. Echoes in ancient texts, myths and scriptures that hint at star-born conquerors. Long before radio telescopes scanned the skies, before humanity had words like galaxy or light year, our ancestors looked upward and saw stories written in the stars. The heavens were not empty to them. They were filled with beings of power, messengers of fire, and chariots that crossed the night sky. Many of these tales are today read as myths, allegories, or sacred visions, but to some they may carry another meaning, faint echoes of encounters with visitors from beyond, conquerors remembered not as aliens, but as gods. Take the book of Genesis, where the Nephilim are described, mighty beings, the sons of God, who came down to earth and took humans as wives. To traditional faith, this is spiritual language, but to those who look with different eyes, it reads like a story of outsiders mingling with humankind, blending bloodlines and shaping destiny. Could this be one of the earliest whispers of an alien presence, remembered as divine because our ancestors had no other frame of reference? In Hindu scriptures, particularly the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, the skies are filled with vimanas, flying chariots powered by fire and capable of moving in every direction. Battles are described where weapons unleash light brighter than 1,000 suns, scorching the earth and poisoning the air. To a modern reader, the descriptions sound eerily like nuclear war and aerial combat. Were these purely symbolic, or were they inherited memories of star-born conquerors whose technology was so advanced it became myth? The Sumerians, among the first to record their history in writing, told of the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the heavens to shape human civilization. They were said to teach agriculture, mathematics, and kingship, but they also demanded tribute, labor, and obedience. Some modern theorists interpret these stories as records of alien rulers, conquerors cloaked in the guise of gods, using knowledge as both gift and weapon. Even the Norse sagas tell of sky battles among the gods, their fiery steeds streaking across the heavens, shaking the earth with thunder. Were these just natural events dramatized into story, or distant memories of craft roaring overhead, their sound and fury preserved in poetic form? The common thread is striking. Across continents, across ages, people told of beings who came from above, bearing power far beyond human means. Sometimes they were bringers of knowledge, sometimes of terror, sometimes both. If they were conquerors, their victories may not have looked like battles at all. A single ship descending in fire would have been enough to bring tribes to their knees. A single display of technology, lightning controlled at will, fire unleashed from the sky, would have been enough to cement divine authority. Skeptics argue, of course, that these are myths, creative ways for ancient peoples to explain natural forces or encode moral lessons. Lightning became a god's weapon, the sun a deity's chariot, comets omens of fate. And yet, the similarities across cultures that never knew one another are hard to ignore. Why do so many speak of beings from the sky, wielding fire, demanding submission? Why do so many sacred texts warn of destruction from above? Perhaps these are simply the patterns of human imagination repeating across time. Or perhaps they are something more, echoes of encounters long forgotten, rewritten through the lens of awe and fear. If conquerors once walked among us, their legacy may live not in ruins or relics, but in stories told around fires, in scriptures whispered through generations. What is most haunting is the possibility that these stories are not only about the past, but also about the future. If star-born conquerors once came, what is to stop them from coming again? Myths may not be literal, but they may carry truths older than history. That the sky is not always empty, that power from above can reshape the earth below, and that humanity's story may already be entangled with visitors who saw us not as equals, but as subjects. The echoes in ancient texts remind us that our fears of invasion are not new. They are woven into the fabric of our oldest memories, passed down in tales of gods and demons, fire and light, conquest and control. Whether myth or memory, they suggest a chilling possibility, that what we now call aliens may not be strangers at all, but long-absent players returning to a stage they once commanded. Government continuity plans, where leaders would hide and who gets left behind. If an alien invasion ever unfolded in real time, the first response of governments would not be to explain or even to fight, it would be to survive. Deep beneath mountains, inside concrete bunkers, and hidden within the unmarked landscapes of remote countryside, lie the secretive infrastructures of continuity of government. These are the plans, facilities, and protocols designed to keep a nation running when disaster strikes. Nuclear war, catastrophic attack, or, in the more chilling scenarios whispered about behind closed doors, an event like alien contact. In the United States, such preparations date back to the Cold War. The fear of nuclear annihilation pushed leaders to carve out hidden redoubts across the country. One of the most famous examples is the Greenbrier Bunker in West Virginia, constructed beneath a luxury resort. For decades, it lay in secrecy, stocked with supplies and chambers meant to house members of Congress if Washington, D.C. ever fell. Elsewhere, places like Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, the heart of NORAD, were reinforced to withstand unimaginable impacts, their tunnels packed with computers and food storage. Today, whispers point to Mount Weather in Virginia and Raven Rock in Pennsylvania as part of this shadow network. The idea is simple. When disaster comes, leaders retreat, communications are maintained, and decisions still flow outward. the state survives, even if the people above do not. But when applied to the scenario of an alien invasion, the thought becomes even darker. What if the first move is not to warn the public, but to vanish into bunkers? What if the instinct of those in power is to preserve themselves while leaving ordinary citizens exposed? This is not paranoia, it is policy. Continuity planning by its very design prioritizes key individuals: the president, military commanders, congressional leaders, scientists deemed vital. Lists are drawn of who qualifies, and by necessity, those lists are short. For every name included, thousands, millions are left outside. If alien ships suddenly appeared in the sky, families would watch motorcades vanish towards secret facilities, while they remained to face the unknown alone. History already offers glimpses of this. During the height of Cold War tensions, evacuation drills and secret flights were prepared to whisk leaders away at a moment's notice. In September 2001, when the United States was under attack, elements of these plans activated. Air Force One stayed airborne, bunkers were manned, and continuity was ensured. The public saw panic, confusion, and smoke in the streets. Behind the scenes, the machinery of survival shifted into gear, designed not to comfort the many, but to preserve the few. If an alien invasion came, the calculus would grow more complex. Which leaders matter most? Do scientists with specialized knowledge of physics or biology outrank political figures? Would nations share facilities? Or would every power retreat into its own shadows, leaving allies outside? The unsettling answer is that no matter how it is framed, most of humanity would not be included. Continuity of government is, by design, continuity of control, not continuity of the people. Then comes the question of effectiveness. What good would bunkers be against an enemy capable of crossing light years? If alien weapons could reach cities in moments, could they not also bore into mountains, collapse underground strongholds, or render their defenses meaningless? Some argue that bunkers are less about survival against advanced forces and more about buying time to make decisions, to attempt negotiation, or simply to prolong the illusion of authority. And what of those left behind? For them, the reality of an alien siege would be harsher. Without leadership visible, panic would surge. Rumors would fill the vacuum. Whispers of betrayal, stories of leaders hiding while the people burned. The very structures meant to preserve society might instead fuel collapse, widening the gulf between those with access to hidden sanctuaries and those abandoned in the open. The cruelest irony of continuity plans is that they assume civilization can be restarted, that after the storm passes, the leaders will emerge, dust themselves off, and rebuild. But against an alien invasion, there may be no after preserving authority in bunkers, may be less a plan of survival than a ritual of denial, an attempt to cling to order while the world above slips into chaos. Still, the existence of these plans reminds us of something deeply human. We prepare for disaster, even for the impossible. We carve out hidden rooms against the storm, hoping they will never be needed. And though we may not all fit inside, the very act of building them reflects a truth. Humanity has always feared forces beyond its control and has always sought to outlast them, even in the dark. If the skies one day fill with visitors from beyond, our leaders will vanish into their secret places, leaving the rest of us to look upward, to wonder what comes next, and to face the silence with only each other for comfort. The role of artificial intelligence. Could AI become Earth's first line of defense? If aliens came to Earth within our lifetime, there is a haunting truth we must face. Our human reflexes, our decision-making speed, and even our understanding of technology might simply not be enough. An invasion from a civilization advanced enough to cross the stars could unfold in seconds, with signals, beams, or invisible forces moving faster than any human could comprehend. In such a scenario, one question grows sharper than all the rest. Could artificial intelligence, our own rapidly advancing creation, become Earth's first line of defense? Already, AI outpaces us in areas of detection and analysis. In cybersecurity, machine learning tools identify attacks before human operators can react. In astrophysics, AI combs through mountains of telescope data, spotting anomalies too subtle for the human eye. Imagine applying that same principle to the skies. A global network of AI-driven observatories could constantly scan for unusual movements, shifts in starlight, heat signatures in orbit, strange radio bursts buried in static. Where human astronomers might take days to recognize a threat, an AI could identify it in moments. But detection is only the beginning. In an invasion scenario, speed is survival. If alien probes or weapons arrived at Earth, decisions would need to be made instantly, too quickly for committees, governments, or even generals to respond. Should missiles be launched? Should satellites be repositioned? Should communications be jammed or rerouted? An AI system could, in theory, react in microseconds, calculating probabilities, predicting enemy moves, and deploying countermeasures before human hands even reach the controls. This is where the idea grows both promising and unsettling. To trust AI as Earth's first line of defense would mean surrendering some control. Would we give a machine authority to decide whether to fire weapons, to shut down grids, or even to trigger nuclear deterrence in response to perceived alien threats? The stakes would be immense, for a single mistake could mean catastrophe. Yet in a battle against technology far beyond ours, hesitation might be equally fatal. Some imagine AI defending us not through weapons but through information warfare. If aliens used signals, frequencies, or psychological manipulation to influence humanity, advanced AI could act as a filter, detecting patterns invisible to human minds, intercepting transmissions, scrambling codes before they reached us. It could serve as a shield for our most vulnerable battleground, the mind. Others picture AI in a more physical role. Already, militaries are developing autonomous drones, robotic fighters, and automated defense systems. A true alien invasion would overwhelm human pilots, but an AI swarm could respond with precision, adapting in real time to enemy tactics. Against alien ships, this might still seem laughably inadequate. But what if their technology included smaller probes, nanomachines, or reconnaissance drones? Earth's best counter might not be humans in cockpits, but AI-controlled fleets fighting at machine speed. And yet, the risks are impossible to ignore. In giving AI the keys to our defense, we open ourselves to new vulnerabilities. What if aliens, far more advanced in computing, could hack or corrupt our systems? What if our own AI, faced with choices too complex, misinterpreted data and turned its defenses against us? In trying to build a guardian, we might create a liability, one that collapses at the first whisper of alien interference. The paradox runs deep. The very technology that could save us might also doom us. Still, the argument remains that without AI, humanity might not stand a chance at all. The human brain is remarkable, but it evolved to survive predators in the savannah, not invaders from the stars. Our reflexes are measured in fractions of a second. Alien technology may move in fractions of light. To meet such a challenge, we may have no choice but to place our trust in the only intelligence we know that can move at those speeds, one we built ourselves. There is also a more haunting possibility. What if AI does not simply defend us but negotiates for us? If aliens communicate in ways beyond our comprehension, mathematical languages, patterns in quantum states, AI may be the only translator capable of bridging the gap. It could become humanity's ambassador, our voice to the stars, whether we intend it or not. In the end, the role of AI in an alien invasion is both our greatest hope and our deepest fear. A line of defense faster, sharper, and more tireless than any human force. But also a reminder that we may have already created something not entirely under our control. And if the skies one day darken with ships, the first response may not come from generals or presidents, but from machines humming quietly in data centers, deciding in an instant whether humanity will resist, survive, or surrender. Alien alliances. What if they already work with governments in secret? The idea that governments might already be in contact with aliens sounds like something pulled from the pages of pulp science fiction or the late-night ramblings of conspiracy theorists. And yet, it is one of the most persistent narratives in modern UFO lore that somewhere, hidden in the shadows of power, Earth's leaders have already struck alliances with beings from beyond. Not a war, not an invasion, but a quiet, secret partnership. This theory often begins with the events of the mid-20th century, when UFO sightings surged worldwide. In 1947, the Roswell incident planted the seed of suspicion. By the 1950s and 1960s, stories of crashed craft, recovered bodies, and shadowy cover-ups were circulating widely. To some, these were simply tales fueled by Cold War paranoia. To others, they were evidence that first contact had already happened, but had been hidden to avoid panic or to secure a strategic advantage. The most famous version of this theory speaks of alleged treaties. One popular claim is that in the early 1950s, the US government struck a deal with extraterrestrials. In exchange for technology, advancements in electronics, propulsion, and materials science, the aliens were allegedly given permission to abduct a limited number of humans for research. To believers, this explains the sudden leaps in computing and aerospace technology after World War II. To skeptics, it's nothing more than coincidence and human ingenuity. And yet, the whispers persist. Stories of underground bases where humans and aliens work side by side, of hangars filled with reverse-engineered craft, of officials briefed on realities that never reach the public. A few former military personnel and contractors have even sworn under oath that they witnessed projects involving materials not of this earth. Each account fuels the belief that governments are not preparing for contact, they're already managing it. The motives for such secrecy are easy to imagine. If aliens offered technology capable of reshaping energy, medicine, or warfare, would any government share it freely, or would they guard it, harness it, and attempt to wield it as the ultimate advantage over rivals? History shows us that nations rarely share power willingly. The nuclear age began with secrecy, and only later did treaties follow. Why would alien technology be any different? But there is also a darker possibility that the supposed alliances are not balanced at all. What if governments, faced with undeniable power, agreed not as equals but as subordinates? A treaty signed under pressure is not an alliance, it is submission. In this view, world leaders may be less in control than we imagine, managing appearances while quietly obeying conditions imposed from above. Such ideas spill into conspiracy theories about missing people. Each year, thousands vanish without explanation. Most are runaways, tragedies, or crimes. But to believers, a fraction may represent something else: fulfillment of an agreement struck in secret, quotas met to keep a fragile alliance intact. Terrifying if true, and yet impossible to prove. Of course, there are also more hopeful versions. Some imagine that governments already cooperate with aliens, not out of fear, but out of vision. Perhaps knowledge of impending dangers, asteroid impacts, cosmic radiation, even hostile civilizations, has been shared, and collaboration is quietly underway to shield Earth. The secrecy in this interpretation is not betrayal, but protection, a way to prevent panic until humanity is ready. Still, secrecy has a cost. Even the perception of hidden truth erodes trust. Every denial of UFO sightings, every classified file, every blurred photograph adds fuel to the suspicion that governments are keeping more from us than they reveal. And if one day alien ships do appear openly, the first question from many will not be "Who are they?" but "How long have you known?" Whether real or imagined, the theory of alien alliances thrives because it speaks to a deep human fear that we are not in control of our own destiny, that deals may already be shaping our future without our consent. It also taps into hope that we are not alone, that someone wiser and older already walks beside us, guiding us towards survival. The truth, hidden or not, remains elusive, but the idea lingers like a shadow that the stage of invasion may not begin with war at all, but with agreements already signed, handshakes already exchanged, in rooms we will never see. And if that is the case, then perhaps the question is not, will aliens invade Earth, but rather how much of the invasion has already begun, quietly, behind closed doors. The oceans as refuge. Could Earth's depths hide humanity from alien eyes? When we imagine alien ships blotting out the sky, our instincts are to look upward, toward the heavens, the mountains, the stars. But Earth has another vast frontier, one that is far less explored than space itself, the oceans. Covering more than 70% of our planet, they are deep, dark and hostile even to us, their native inhabitants. Could these same qualities make them our last refuge if alien eyes ever turn toward Earth? At first glance, the idea sounds almost poetic. Humanity, faced with an overwhelming force from above, retreats below into the waters that gave us birth billions of years ago. But the possibility is not entirely fanciful. The oceans are immense shields, absorbing light, scattering radiation, and concealing anything beneath their surface from orbital observation. A fleet of alien scouts might detect our cities glowing at night, but would they see a submarine fleet hundreds of meters down, silent and hidden? Consider the Mariana Trench, nearly 7 miles deep, a place so hostile that only a handful of human missions have ever reached it. Pressures there are crushing, temperatures near freezing, sunlight absent. Yet life survives, even thrives in such conditions. Strange fish, translucent creatures, and microbes form an alien world of their own, one largely invisible to us. If Earth's own technology still struggles to reach these depths, then perhaps even alien sensors might face limits in mapping them with precision. Could the oceans, in their immensity and hostility, serve as camouflage against invaders far more advanced than us? Submarines already demonstrate the principle. During the Cold War, nuclear submarines became humanity's ultimate insurance policy, able to vanish into the oceans for months, undetectable and untouchable. Entire arsenals of weapons were hidden beneath the waves, ready to strike even if cities above were destroyed. In an alien invasion scenario, this same strategy could expand. Not only submarines, but entire hidden bases built into seafloors, stocked with food, energy, and technology to outlast sieges from above. There are legends, too, that hint at the ocean's mysterious role in the alien question. Sailors for centuries told of glowing objects under the water, moving faster than any natural creature. In modern times, pilots and naval officers have reported USOs, unidentified submerged objects, craft-like forms darting beneath the waves, defying physics just as UFOs do in the skies. If such reports hold even a kernel of truth, it may mean aliens already know the oceans as hiding places, or perhaps even use them themselves. Of course, the ocean is no perfect sanctuary. Any species advanced enough to cross light years may possess tools that pierce water as easily as air. Sonar, heat mapping, gravitational sensors, technologies we cannot yet imagine, might render our concealment futile. And while the oceans protect from sight, they do not protect from control. A single strike, a pulse of energy into the waters could cripple anything hiding there. But even then, the oceans offer humanity something no other environment can: time. Time to scatter, to regroup, to resist. Cities above ground are fixed targets, glowing beacons of human presence. The seas are shifting, endless, difficult to map. They provide unpredictability, the one advantage that even a weaker species can wield against a stronger one. There is also a symbolic weight in the idea of retreating to the oceans. Life on Earth began there. Every fish, every creature, every human is descended from the first organisms that swam in those waters billions of years ago. To flee back into the oceans in a moment of existential threat would be to circle back to our origins, a reminder that survival often means returning to where it all began. Some futurists even imagine a long-term shift, cities not just hidden under the ocean temporarily, but built permanently, domes and habitats pressed into the seafloor, glowing quietly in the dark. A second Earth beneath the waves, thriving while the skies above remain hostile. Such visions may sound like science fiction, but they carry with them a deep, instinctual truth. When danger comes from above, the natural place to hide is below. Could Earth's depths truly shield us from alien eyes? Perhaps not forever, but they may provide enough concealment to endure, enough space to imagine, enough quiet to plan. The oceans are not only barriers, they are cradles, ancient and vast, reminders that even under siege, Earth still holds mysteries powerful enough to protect her children, at least for a time. Sky wars above us, conspiracies of battles already fought in orbit. Most of us look up at the night sky and see peace, stars scattered like diamonds, the quiet glow of the moon, the faint streak of a satellite crossing silently overhead. But for decades, there have been whispers that the skies above are not as calm as they appear. Conspiracies tell of hidden wars already fought in orbit, of alien craft clashing with human technology, of battles that leave no smoke, no fire, but only silence in the void. The rumors trace back to the Cold War, when secrecy cloaked much of what nations did in space. Strange satellite failures, sudden flashes seen by astronomers, and unexplained debris fields were often explained away as accidents. Yet some claimed these were not malfunctions at all, but evidence of skirmishes, either between human powers testing secret weapons or between Earth and forces from beyond. To believers, the space race was never just about planting flags on the moon, but about preparing the high ground for wars we were never told about. One of the most enduring conspiracy theories involves reports from astronauts themselves. Some claim that during missions, lights and objects appeared outside spacecraft, moving in ways no debris should move, sometimes even shadowing the astronauts for hours. Official records often mark these as ice crystals or reflections, yet the insistence of some astronauts that they saw something more has kept suspicion alive. Could these sightings have been glimpses of a larger conflict playing out beyond our atmosphere, one carefully hidden from the public? There are also tales of weapons already stationed in orbit. Whistleblowers and fringe researchers speak of black projects that launched more than satellites, platforms capable of firing directed energy beams, particle weapons, or advanced interceptors. In this version of the story, Earth has already engaged hostile visitors, testing its defenses in brief clashes far above. The absence of smoke and fire makes the battlefield invisible, but the wreckage, the sudden death of satellites, the growing belts of debris are read as scars of those hidden wars. And then there are the stranger claims that not all the battles have been ours. Some say alien factions themselves may fight over Earth, clashing for dominance, while humanity remains caught in the middle, unaware of the forces overhead. The flashes seen by astronomers, the sudden vanishing of objects tracked in orbit, these, they argue, are not mistakes in observation, but the footprints of conflicts too vast and advanced for us to fully perceive. Skeptics, of course, dismiss much of this. Space is harsh and unpredictable. Satellites fail from solar radiation, micrometeoroids, or simple mechanical faults. Debris fields grow from accidents, not battles. Yet the conspiracies endure, fueled by secrecy and the human instinct to wonder what is hidden just beyond our reach. After all, if governments are willing to conceal new weapons from their own citizens, why would they not conceal clashes with forces from beyond? The thought is chilling, that while we live our lives below, battles already rage above us, silent wars in the cold vacuum. No sirens, no news bulletins, no visible flames, just the quiet erasure of machines, the sudden loss of satellites, the mysterious flickers seen in telescopes. If true, it means Earth is not waiting for first contact, but already surviving in a contested sky. And perhaps that explains the silence of space. If battles are already being fought, the victors may not be interested in announcing themselves. They may prefer secrecy, control, and patience. Humanity, in this view, is not the central player, but a bystander on a planet watched and perhaps fought over by powers beyond our comprehension. Whether these stories are truth, exaggeration, or imagination, they share one thread: the suspicion that the sky we see is not the whole story. That above our atmosphere, in the darkness where no sound can travel, the future of Earth may already be tested in wars invisible to us, wars whose echoes may one day descend into our world below. The collapse of nations, how invasion would reorder power across the world. Every map we know is divided into colours, lines marking nations, flags waving over capitals, borders patrolled by soldiers. We grow up believing these divisions are permanent, as though the names of countries and their governments are written into the earth itself. Yet history shows how fragile such boundaries really are. Empires collapse, borders shift, and nations rise and fall with time. If an alien invasion were to occur in our lifetime, those lines on the map would be among the first casualties. In moments of crisis, power is tested. Earth's governments are designed to handle wars with each other, not with forces beyond the planet. Nuclear stockpiles, aircraft carriers, armies of millions, these are built with rival nations in mind. But what happens when the enemy is not Russia or China, not America or Europe, but something from the stars? Suddenly, all those divisions that feel so permanent may begin to look meaningless. One possibility is the collapse of smaller nations first. Countries with fewer resources, no militaries of significance, and fragile economies could crumble in days. If global communication faltered, if satellites went dark, if the internet failed, these nations might vanish from the global stage, unable to call for help, unable even to be seen. Their governments might dissolve under the pressure of fear, leaving people to fend for themselves, fragmented into tribes and communities. The superpowers, meanwhile, would face their own dilemmas. The United States, China, and Russia might scramble to respond, but would they respond against the aliens or against each other? An invasion could be seen as opportunity as much as threat. Imagine one power choosing to withhold cooperation, hoping the enemy cripples its rivals first. Alliances like NATO or the United Nations might fracture under the stress, replaced not by unity, but by suspicion. Each nation would ask, are they our allies in survival, or are they bargaining secretly with the invaders? In some scenarios, governments might not collapse immediately, but they could be forced into submission. If aliens demonstrated overwhelming force, shutting down power grids, disabling militaries, leaders might surrender to preserve their populations. Some nations would fall willingly into collaboration, becoming client states under alien oversight. Others would resist, fracturing into insurgencies. The map of Earth would be redrawn not by human hands, but by alien strategies of divide and rule. There is also the possibility of a global government emerging under the pressure of invasion. Faced with extinction, nations might dissolve their rivalries and unify in desperation. A Council of Earth could rise, pooling resources to negotiate or resist. But unity under pressure is fragile. Would such a council truly represent all nations or only the strongest? Would billions of people follow it willingly, or would rebellion and chaos fracture it from within? The collapse of nations would not just be political, it would be cultural. Borders preserve languages, religions, and identities. Under invasion, these might blur or be erased. Refugees fleeing cities would scatter across continents. Cultures might be uprooted overnight, their survival dependent not on tradition but on adaptability. Entire histories could vanish with the fall of their homelands, swallowed by the tide of war. And yet, collapse does not always mean erasure. Sometimes it means transformation. After Rome fell, Europe did not disappear. It reshaped into kingdoms and nations that eventually became the modern world. After empires fractured in the 20th century, new nations emerged, carrying different identities forward. An alien invasion could trigger a similar turning point. The end of the world as we know it, followed by the birth of something entirely new. Perhaps that is the most haunting possibility, that humanity's first true world government would not be born out of peace, but out of desperation. Not out of choice, but out of survival. Nations as we know them may not withstand the weight of the cosmos pressing down. Their collapse would reorder power across the world, sweeping away the familiar map and replacing it with something unrecognizable. Something forged in the shadow of forces far greater than any flag or border. And when the dust settled, whatever humanity remained would look back on the age of nations as a fleeting moment, a prelude to the day when Earth learned that its divisions were nothing more than lines drawn in sand, lines washed away when the tide of the universe finally came crashing in. Resistance or surrender? Would humanity fight, flee, or serve? When imagining alien invasion, the question that lingers heavier than any other is not about their weapons, their ships, or their motives. It is about us. How would humanity respond? Would we resist with everything we have, even knowing how outmatched we are? Would we flee into the shadows of our planet, hiding in oceans, mountains, or underground? Or would we, in desperation or pragmatism, surrender and serve? The truth is that human history provides examples of all three. Resistance is perhaps our most instinctive response. From ancient tribes defending their lands against empires, to modern nations rising against occupation, people have always fought back, even when defeat seemed inevitable. It is not always about winning. It is about dignity, about refusing to go quietly. If alien ships filled our skies, resistance movements might rise in every city, armed not with high technology, but with whatever they could find. Molotov cocktails against drones, ambushes against patrols, entire communities refusing to bow. But resistance in the face of an interstellar force might look different than against human invaders. Guerrilla fighters could no longer hide in forests or deserts. They would need to hide in plain sight, blending into populations, waiting for moments of weakness. Some imagine cyber resistance, hackers attempting to infiltrate alien systems, planting digital viruses like modern slingshots against galactic Goliaths. Others dream of capturing fragments of alien technology, reverse engineering weapons from wreckage and turning the enemy's own tools against them. Still, resistance carries a price. History also shows that overwhelming powers often retaliate with brutality. Entire cities could be erased in response to small uprisings. resistance might become less about defeating the invaders and more about preserving humanity's will, keeping hope alive for future generations, even if the present is lost. Fleeing is another path. When empires burned cities, people fled into the mountains, forests, or across seas. During modern wars, civilians escape into neighboring countries, carrying only what they can hold. In an alien invasion, the refuge might not be across borders, those would mean little, but beneath the earth and oceans. Subterranean bunkers, abandoned mines and deep-sea habitats could become sanctuaries for those who choose to vanish rather than fight. But fleeing is not always escape. It is survival through patience. The oceans and caves might shield humanity for years or decades, long enough to adapt, regroup, and wait for an opportunity. Perhaps the invaders would eventually leave or grow careless. Perhaps human survivors would one day return, hardened and hidden, to reclaim the surface. Then there is surrender, a choice as old as conquest itself. Some nations in history laid down arms when faced with overwhelming power, choosing servitude over annihilation. If alien technology dwarfs ours, if their weapons can disable our cities in seconds, if their fleets can blot out the sun, then surrender may not be cowardice, but strategy. To serve might be to survive. But what would service mean? Some imagine collaboration, humans working under alien guidance, helping build structures or harvest resources in exchange for protection. Others imagine something darker, servitude as workers, breeders, or caretakers of a world no longer ours. And there would surely be those who embraced the invaders willingly, convinced they were gods or saviors rather than conquerors. History shows that some people always side with power, believing service ensures survival or even privilege. The truth is, humanity's response would not be one choice, but all three. Some would resist, guns in hand, ready to die for Earth. Some would flee into the shadows, clinging to survival. Some would kneel, hoping obedience meant safety. The question is not which path humanity would choose, it is how these paths would collide. Would resistors see collaborators as traitors? Would survivors underground emerge to find a world they no longer recognize? Would those who surrendered regret it when they discovered the true cost of service? In the end, an alien invasion would test not just our weapons, but our spirit. It would divide us along lines deeper than nations, into those who fight, those who flee, and those who serve. And perhaps, in that division, lies the greatest danger of all, that the invaders would not need to defeat us completely. They would only need to watch as we fractured, splintered, and chose different paths until resistance, survival, and surrender became not a choice against them, but against each other. Alien harvest, conspiracy theories of Earth as a farm for resources, or us. When people think of alien invasion, they often imagine conquest, fleets descending, cities burning, humanity enslaved. But for some theorists, the story is even more unsettling. They suggest that Earth is not a battlefield at all. It is a farm, a place cultivated, maintained, and harvested by powers beyond our comprehension. The crops, our planet's resources, and perhaps, in the darkest versions of the theory, humanity itself. The idea of alien harvesting is rooted in an uncomfortable truth. Earth is rich. Our oceans are vast reservoirs of water. Our crust holds precious metals and rare elements, and our biosphere teems with life. To us, these are the building blocks of civilization. To a star-faring species, they might be rare treasures worth crossing light years to obtain. Water alone is a resource worth imagining through alien eyes. While hydrogen is abundant in the universe, liquid water in such vast quantities may be rare. Comets carry ice, yes, but Earth offers oceans, staggering supplies concentrated on a single world. A civilization needing water for fuel, life support, or industry might see our planet not as a home, but as a reservoir. Imagine entire alien fleets siphoning the seas, leaving behind deserts where once waves rolled. To us, it would feel like the apocalypse. To them, it would be routine harvesting. Then there are minerals. Rare earth elements crucial for technology like electronics, superconductors, and propulsion systems are scattered in small amounts across asteroids and planets. Earth's crust, however, contains rich veins concentrated by geology and time. Gold, platinum, uranium, lithium, all precious to us, but perhaps far more valuable to an advanced civilization. To aliens, strip mining Earth might not even register as conquest. It would be resource collection, the way we cut down forests or net fish from the sea. The darker turn comes when conspiracy theories suggest the harvest is not just of materials, but of us. Human beings, with our biology, our emotions, our very consciousness, might be the product of cultivation. Some fringe theories propose that aliens seeded Earth with life billions of years ago, nurturing evolution not for our benefit, but for theirs. In this view, abductions are not random. They are part of a long-term program of monitoring, experimentation, and culling. Humanity, the theory goes, is being fattened like livestock, watched until the day of collection arrives. This chilling concept is often tied to stories of abductions and experiments. Witnesses describe being examined, probed, and sampled, skin, blood, reproductive material taken. What if these are not random events, but the equivalent of a farmer checking the herd? Some even speak of hybrid programs, where humans are crossbred with alien genetics. Could this be the beginning of a selective harvest designed to create beings suited for purposes we cannot yet imagine? Ancient myths echo strangely with these fears. Cultures worldwide told of gods demanding sacrifice, of beings who descended to take offerings of crops, animals, and sometimes humans. To skeptics, these are symbolic stories. But to believers, they hint at a pattern, that Earth has always been under observation, and that what we once called gods might have been earlier visitations by harvesters from the stars. Even modern conspiracy culture thrives on this theme. Some claim secret documents reveal agreements where governments allow abductions in exchange for technology, treating citizens as part of the bargain. Others imagine hidden bases under the oceans or within mountains, where harvesting already happens quietly, unnoticed by the wider world. These theories feed into a terrifying possibility that invasion will not look like destruction, but like collection, methodical, clinical, unstoppable. Of course, skeptics argue the opposite. Why would an advanced civilization need Earth's resources at all? The universe is filled with water, metals, and energy, far easier to obtain from uninhabited worlds. Why cross light years to mine a planet teeming with life when asteroids offer no resistance? Yet the farm theory persists because it speaks less to logic and more to fear, the primal dread of being prey. And perhaps that is the real power of the alien harvest idea. It flips the human perspective. For thousands of years, we have been the harvesters of forests, of oceans, of animals. We bend ecosystems to our will, rarely asking whether the lives we consume have their own stories. If aliens view us the same way we view cattle or crops, then invasion would not be a war. It would be routine, as unremarkable to them as slaughterhouses are to us. In this haunting scenario, Earth is not a battlefield, not a jewel to conquer, but a field waiting to be reaped. And humanity, for all its cities and technologies, may be nothing more than part of the harvest. Dreams as invasion. Could their first step be entering our subconscious? Every night, when our bodies rest and our eyes flutter beneath closed lids, we drift into a world that feels both familiar and strange. Dreams take us through places that never were, conversations that never happened, and fears we never voiced. They are intimate, unguarded, and deeply human. But what if dreams are not just the playground of the mind? What if they could be the front line of an invasion? The idea may sound fantastical, but it holds a certain eerie logic. After all, dreams are the one place where we cannot fully defend ourselves. Awake, we can question, resist, and analyze. Asleep, we surrender. Our subconscious becomes open ground, vulnerable to suggestion. If an advanced species had the ability to project thoughts, images, or emotions, why would they attack our cities first when they could step into our minds? Stories of alien abduction often begin in bedrooms, with people describing paralysis, strange lights, and visitors approaching as they drift between waking and sleep. Psychologists attribute this to sleep paralysis, but to others it suggests something far more deliberate: manipulation of the dream state. The moment when we are most defenseless might be the perfect time for an invader to enter, not through doors or skies, but through the delicate corridors of the mind. Imagine an invasion that doesn't announce itself with ships in the sky, but with dreams spreading across humanity. People around the world begin to see the same symbols, the same figures with dark eyes, the same strange landscapes. At first, it would be dismissed as coincidence, a quirk of psychology. But then the similarities grow undeniable. What if these shared dreams were not random, but rehearsals, conditioning humanity to accept, obey, or fear something before it arrives? We already know that the human mind can be swayed by suggestion. A song stuck in your head, an image replayed over and over, can shift mood and memory. Advertisers and propagandists exploit this daily. If humans can manipulate each other with words and pictures, what could a civilization with technology millions of years ahead do? Perhaps they wouldn't need weapons at all, just the ability to whisper into our subconscious until our resistance crumbled before we even woke. There are metaphors here that resonate with everyday life. Consider how a nightmare lingers long after waking, shaping your day with unease. Now imagine that nightmare was planted, its details chosen to weaken your confidence, to isolate you from others, to convince you of something you would never believe awake. An invasion of dreams could be subtler than any physical attack, turning humanity against itself one night at a time. Ancient cultures may have already intuited this possibility. Shamans, prophets, and visionaries often spoke of dreams as bridges to other realms, places where spirits or gods could send warnings, commands, or glimpses of the future. What if those stories were fragments of older encounters, moments when something external reached into human sleep, leaving behind memories we later clothed in myth? Modern science, too, hints at how fragile our dreams are. Experiments show that external sounds, lights, or even gentle touches can alter dream content. A person can be guided into dreaming about rain by the sound of water, or about flight by the sensation of wind. If such small nudges are possible with crude tools, what might a species with mastery over brainwaves or consciousness itself achieve? Dreams could become canvases, painted over until they no longer belong to us. And the most unnerving part, we might not even notice. If alien influence seeped into our dreams, how would we separate it from our own imagination? How many recurring dreams would we dismiss as stress or symbolism, never realizing they were part of something larger? An invasion through dreams would leave no wreckage, no visible scars, only patterns hidden in the private theaters of billions of sleeping minds. What if the invasion has already begun? What if the nightmares that haunt us, the figures we see in the corner of our dreamscapes, are not ours alone? If that were true, then the battlefield is not the skies above or the cities we build, but the silence of the night, the moments when our minds wander and the gates to our subconscious stand open. Dreams, after all, are the most personal territory we possess. If aliens can cross into that space, then the invasion would already be underway, quiet, invisible, and inescapable. A mirror to ourselves. How alien invasion reveals human fragility and fear. Speculating about alien invasion is never just about them. It is also perhaps mostly about us. Every story we tell of ships blotting out the skies or beings descending from the stars is, in some way, a reflection of our own insecurities, our own cracks, our own doubts about how strong or fragile we truly are. Aliens, in this sense, become mirrors, showing us not only what might come from beyond, but what already exists within. Think of how we imagine the invasion unfolding. Some picture fire raining down on cities, fleets burning across the horizon. Others imagine subtler assaults, dreams manipulated, systems collapsed, societies turned against themselves. Both visions are less about aliens and more about the fears we already carry. Fire from the sky is war, magnified. Psychological manipulation is propaganda, advanced. The collapse of power grids or governments, these are vulnerabilities we know intimately, amplified by the thought of something greater exploiting them. It is telling that when we speak of invasion, we often describe chaos in familiar terms. Empty shelves at supermarkets, darkened city streets, silence on the radio. We imagine the loss of technology, the breakdown of order, because deep down we already know how fragile those systems are. Hurricanes, earthquakes, cyber attacks, they have all shown us how quickly modern life unravels. Aliens, in this sense, are less a new fear than the ultimate stress test of what we already know can fail. Even the idea of collaboration and betrayal, the suspicion that some humans would side with invaders, echoes history. We have seen it in wars and occupations, the collaborators, the profiteers, the desperate who bow in hope of survival. Our stories of alien alliances in secret government bunkers or treaties signed behind closed doors reflect our distrust not only of outsiders but of each other. The alien, in this way, holds up a mirror that shows us our divisions, our selfishness, our suspicion that power will always serve itself first. There is fragility, too, in the human body itself. Much of the fear surrounding abductions, experiments, or hybrid agendas lies in the recognition that we are vulnerable to forces we cannot resist. A surgeon's scalpel, a researcher's microscope, tools we use casually on animals become terrifying when turned toward us. Aliens, imagined as advanced researchers, force us to see ourselves not as masters of nature, but as specimens, fragile and exposed. And yet, there is also something profoundly human in imagining resistance. The stories of small groups fighting back, of guerrilla warfare against impossible odds, speak not only to our fragility, but to our spirit. The mirror does not show only weakness, it shows the persistence of hope, even in the face of overwhelming force. It is the same spirit that carried survivors through wars, disasters, and collapses throughout history. The invasion becomes a stage where our deepest contradictions play out: fear and courage, selfishness and unity, despair and defiance. The fragility is not just physical or political, it is existential. The thought of invasion confronts us with our place in the universe. For centuries, we have comforted ourselves with the illusion of importance, imagining humanity as the center of the story. But an alien fleet appearing over Earth would shatter that illusion in an instant. We would see ourselves not as rulers of a planet, but as one small species on a small world, subject to powers so vast they make our struggles look like sparks against a storm. That realization, the cosmic smallness of humanity, may be the deepest fear of all. And perhaps this is why the idea of invasion resonates so strongly. It is not simply fear of others, but fear of ourselves, fear of how quickly our systems break, fear of how easily we turn on each other, fear of how small we truly are when measured against the universe. The aliens, real or imagined, are not just invaders, they are reflections, showing us truths we prefer to ignore. To think of invasion is to peer into that mirror, to see fragility where we pretend there is strength, to see fear where we pretend there is control, and yet to look into the mirror is also to recognize resilience, the strange, stubborn spark that keeps humanity imagining survival, even against odds that border on the impossible. Aliens may or may not ever come, but the stories we tell about them reveal something undeniable, that the greatest confrontation may not be with beings from the stars, but with the truths about ourselves reflected in their imagined arrival. The question that remains: if they came in your lifetime, what would you choose? To resist, to believe, or to hope? It is easy to speak of alien invasion in terms of us and them, of humanity facing some unimaginable other. But beneath all the grand speculation, the collapse of nations, the sieges of cities, and the whispers of conspiracies, one question remains deeply personal. If they came in your lifetime, what would you choose? Would you resist? Would you rise against impossible odds, knowing that your weapons might mean nothing, but that your refusal to surrender could still matter? History is filled with such examples: small groups defying empires, outnumbered armies holding lines long enough to inspire future generations. Resistance is not always about victory. Sometimes it is about dignity, about refusing to go silently into the night. If ships darkened the skies over your city, would you take up whatever you could, join others in defiance, and carve your name into the story of those who stood, even if only for a moment? Or would you believe, not in conquest, but in contact? Would you see them not as enemies, but as messengers, beings whose presence might hold answers to questions older than humanity itself? Where did life come from? What lies beyond the stars? What is our place in the universe? Belief could mean trusting that their arrival was not an ending, but a beginning. Yet belief carries its own dangers. To believe too quickly may mean surrendering to manipulation, mistaking power for wisdom, seeing salvation where there is only subjugation. Still, belief could be a choice of courage, a refusal to see everything through the lens of fear. Or would you hope? Hope is quieter, less visible, but no less powerful. To hope is to survive in the shadows, to light candles in the dark, to trust that even in defeat there will be a tomorrow. Hope may not win battles, but it preserves meaning. It is the whispered promise to children in bunkers, the determination to plant seeds even when the skies above are filled with ships. To hope is to believe that no matter how powerful the invaders, the human story will not end. Not today, not with you. Each choice carries weight, and none are easy. To resist may cost everything. To believe may invite betrayal. To hope may feel like surrender in disguise. Yet together they form the tapestry of humanity itself. We are a species that resists, that believes, that hopes, often all at once. And so, if the day comes in your lifetime, and the question is no longer hypothetical, but real, if the skies crack open and the world holds its breath, what will you choose? Will you resist, knowing the odds? Will you believe, reaching for meaning in the unknown? Or will you hope, quietly, stubbornly, for survival and renewal? The answer may not shape only your own fate. It may shape the fate of all who come after. Because in the end, invasion is not only about what comes from the stars, but about the choices made here, on the ground, in the hearts of those who must face it. And perhaps the most haunting thought of all is this: that the future of humanity may rest not in the hands of generals or leaders, but in the simple, private choice each of us makes when confronted with the unknown.